Lloyd Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2. Here. Gary Dickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Our invocation today will be delivered by Associate Pastor Aaron Lynn from the Wedgwood Baptist Church, Fort Worth, Texas. Sir, thank you very much for coming down here today.
Well, Wedgwood Baptist Church says hey and Merry Christmas to everybody. Y'all join me in prayer. Lord, I'm so grateful for our public servants. And Lord, I'm grateful for every single person who's here. Lord, they're doing the best that they can. God, it seems many times, especially in these days, they've got an impossible job to do. But I pray that you would give them wisdom and grant them favor, Lord. Give them refreshing. And Lord, I pray more than anything else that your goodness and mercy will follow them today and in the days to come, Lord. We want to thank you so much for today. Help us to take advantage of it for your honor and glory. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Reverend.
Mr. Manius, agenda announcements.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of court, we have a number of announcements today as it relates to the agenda. The first one is under the County Administrator section, Item Aj1. This is a contract with the hospital district. We're going to ask that we hold that. There's some corrections that need to be made in the contract itself, and we'll bring that back at a later date. Under purchasing, Item Aj1. There's a revised court communication. I believe we loaded into the electronic version of the backup. You may have it in your red folder also. On this particular one, we just simply changed the funding year from 20 to 21. So it's a minor change. Also under purchasing, Item 8J11. This is a consent item. We have put a corrected court communication in there as far as the funding source as it relates to that particular item. In Your Honor, today we have a series of bonds and certificates of self-insurance that we will be covering whenever we get to item number 9, which is on page 8 of your agenda. So when we get to that point, we'll have probably 10 or 11 bonds or certificates for bonding issues for different elected officials we're going to ask that you approve. Now, as it relates to how we're going to go ahead and move through the agenda this morning, of course, I believe we have a video that we're going to show initially, but whenever we come to the administrator section, we're going to move then to the briefing items, and we're going to first have our briefing item dealing with transportation. I believe the second one is a request from a municipality as it relates to the city of Bedford. And then we're going to ask Vinny to come up and give us our current and emerging health issues. And then we'll move forward after that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Manius. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of December the 8th.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of resolutions of appreciation today. The first is for Peggy Luttrell Martindale. Would she come forward?
I think I will.
I'll read this into the record. Peggy, thank you very much for being here today. Whereas Peggy Luttrell Martindale began serving the Del DeHay Law Library of Tarrant County in 1986. And whereas Peggy graduated with her bachelor's degree in 1986 and her master's degree in library science in 1988. And whereas through hard work, education, and great success, Peggy accepted the role of assistant director of the law library in 1990. And whereas Peggy has served the citizens of Tarrant County in the highest tradition of public service and leaves a legacy as a Tarrant County employee who always maintained high standards. And whereas Peggy has earned the love, respect, and devotion of the people of this county for her diligence and devotion to her work and the cause of justice, and whereas numerous library patrons have returned to the law library to receive Peggy's words of encouragement during their struggles in life with her famous saying, "Keep preserving." And whereas on December 31st, 2020, Peggy will retire from Tarrant County with having faithfully served the Del DeHay Law Library for over 34 years. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby recognize Peggy Luttrell Martindale for her years of exemplary and invaluable service to the citizens of Tarrant County. In witness whereof we are herein to set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 15th day of December 2020, and I'll move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion, Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Not yet.
Yeah, you don't get away that quick.
So, Judge, as you come down, I just want to make a comment about Peggy. We have leaned on Peggy for the last 10 or 15 years. Every time we've had a problem in the law library, Peggy was the one who stood up and solved it for us. And I think from the staff level, we're going to miss you very, very much.
Well, this next one's a hard one, too. A resolution of appreciation for Patricia Ward. Patricia, come on forward. Whereas Patricia Ward began her employment with Tarrant County as a planner on June 10th, 1985, and whereas after 12 years of hard work and dedication and with much passion for the community that she serves, Patricia took on the role of Director of Community Development in July of 1997. And whereas as a Community Development Director, Patricia has provided management, direction, oversight, and implementation of over $400 million in federally funded projects, including construction of more than 1,000 affordable housing units, rehabilitation of over 2,200 homes owned by elderly or veterans, completion of 950 public infrastructure projects, construction of 6 community senior centers, and assistance to 8 homeless shelters, providing aid to thousands of homeless individuals in our community. And whereas Patricia is respected and recognized in her field both locally and nationally for her extensive knowledge and experience in housing and community development, and she has shared this expertise through her service on numerous local and regional boards and committees, as well as state and national organizations including NACO, NAFA, NACID, and as president from 1996 to 1997, and TALFA as president from 2018 to president. And whereas on January the 4th, 2021, Patricia will retire from Tarrant County with over 35 years of invaluable service to the community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby recognize Patricia Ward for her years of exemplary and loyal service to the citizens of Tarrant County. In witness whereof, we have herein to set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 15th day of December 2020. Move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Okay. Let us vote. You can clap again. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Fickus.
I just want to make a comment. Patricia has been, gosh, I know for at least 30-something years, she has organized and kept in line somewhere between 25 and 41 mayors and former mayors and
he's one of them.
Around Tarrant County as the liaison for the Tarrant County Mayor's Council. On top of that, she has, for the past probably close to 20 years, she has helped organize the monthly operations, kept the books, written the checks for Tarrant County Transportation Coalition. And for those, I want to thank you for all your hard work and dedication to, and there's tons of other, the Historical Commission and many, many other things that you have been involved with. But those two, the Mayor's Council and TRTC, you just done a fabulous job. They'd be lost without your help. So thank you.
How come she only takes one and it takes you three? And hers come out pretty good. What, would you like to make some comments?
Sure, and I'll be very brief, GK.
Let me start the timer.
So, just want to say thank you very much. It's been a wonderful career, and given the opportunity to serve the people I live with in our communities, I'd like to thank the Commissioners Court for being leaders and setting the policy for this county. It's one of the best counties in the country to live in. I also like to recognize GK. He's put up with me for a lot of years, and I put up with him for a lot of years. So, but I do appreciate it, and thank you very much, GK and the Commissioners. Thank you.
I wanted to go ahead and read the memorial resolution.
Yes, please.
Okay. So some of you may have learned recently that a longtime leader in our community had recently passed, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Jim Swafford from the city of Grand Prairie. So I want to read a memorial resolution in his honor, and then also ask that we adjourn the court in his honor, along with others who have lost their lives to COVID. Whereas the family and friends of Jim Swafford are deeply saddened by the loss of their cherished father, grandfather, brother, and uncle who passed away at the age of 84 on Tuesday, December 1st of 2020. And whereas his loss is not only felt by his loved ones, but the entire city and county, as he was a longtime figure in the community and public servant. Whereas he was first elected to serve as Grand Prairie council member and mayor pro tem from 1977 to 1979, and again elected to represent District 2 in 1998, where he served until 2020 and named mayor pro tem 4 more times. And whereas he was known as being a force of nature with a servant's heart, funny, compassionate, had a memory for detail and savvy financial skills, that served him well in his banking career, from which he retired in 1996 as president and CEO of Nations Bank, or Bank of America. And whereas Mr. Swafford was a graduate of Arlington High School, UT Arlington, and the Southwestern Graduate School of Banking at Southern Methodist University. And whereas he spent a lifetime helping others, serving on nonprofit and civic organization boards, the board of directors of the Methodist Health System in Dallas since 1985, the Grand Prairie ISD Board of Education from 1984 to 1993, and as its president in 1985 to 1986, among others. And whereas he recently lost Judy, his dear wife of 59 years, and they leave a legacy of kindness and service to the community in a void that cannot be filled. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, pay tribute to the memory of a beloved and honorable man who will never be forgotten, and extend our heartfelt sympathy to the members of his family and loved ones for their tremendous loss. And witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 15th day of December of 2020. I will bring this back for ratification during our last court meeting, but did want to be sure to honor him. And again, we adjourn the meeting in the honor of Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Jim Swafford, as well as the hundreds who have lost their lives to COVID in Tarrant County. Thank you.
We're not going to ask for any court action today.
No.
We'll come back and ratify it on the 20th.
Very good. I know you may have.
Jim was a very, very close friend of our family, and this was a tremendous loss for me and for everybody in our family. Growing up, he was around. My dad and him were closest of friends, and we would go on trips in the organization that I was a part of. We'd have conferences in the summer, and Jim was always one of the ones that would go with us on that, he and his wife. And this is a very tough loss. And, we think back over the last 10 months, and sometimes we'll use the word, well, it's an insignificant number of folks that we've lost. There is no loss that is insignificant. Whether it's your friend, whether it's your son, daughter, spouse, mother, or father, there is no loss that is insignificant. And we're going to miss Jim Swafford, and we're going to miss his wife. And thank you very much for the resolution.
Thank you.
Commissioner Figgis, I believe you have someone else that,
Yes.
in fact, as we were talking about the agenda today, I thought about what you're...
Yeah. A very good friend of Texas counties and a personal friend of mine, Bob Summers, who was with COFILE. And Bob served COFILE serving primarily county clerks and district clerks all over North Texas and really all over Oklahoma and states beyond. And Bob passed away on the job, I believe Friday. And I'd like to close our meeting today also in his memory. So thank you. Bob was a great guy, great friend to county government and all those that were involved in. So.
Thank you. Anything else? You have somebody singing? Don't say it.
That looks real good, Judge.
It is the day for the Precinct 1 Christmas celebration and our gift to the citizens of Tarrant County. This is the season of Advent. where we anticipate with joy and hope and love the birth of the Christ child, which means for us salvation and joy and peace. But in this year's season of Advent, we also anticipate, we hope for the arrival of a vaccine that can begin the healing of COVID-19 that has raged across this country and taken over 300,000 lives. And we also, in this season of Advent, hope for the advent of a new administration that will help heal the body politic in this nation and bring about unity and joy and peace. So you see, in this season, hope is not dead. Hope is very much alive. And there is nothing that shows more of our belief in hope than the voices of children raised in song. So we were not able to bring to you this morning a choir in person, but we do have a video. And they are with us in spirit. They are the 4-year-olds, the pre-K class of Saintsville Academy, where the head mistress is Tiffany Pace Whitaker. The board chair is the Reverend Milton Pace, and the director of music is Grammy-nominated local musician Taylor Pace. I give you the Saintsville Academy Choir, and Merry Christmas to each and every one of you. Christmas to each and every one of you and to your family.
And also to you.
Awesome.
That's what it's all about. Let's just adjourn.
On a high note, let's end on a high note.
That's right. I guess we better pay the bills. So let's just go to, I need approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Oh, I was waiting for GK to.
You have a second?
No.
I'll second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. I'm kind of wondering out there if I'm serious about this. Go ahead and mark that off the little sheet here. Okay, I guess we better go back up and do the consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. You kind of waiting to see what I'm going to do next?
Yeah. It's my turn now.
Only if I tell you it is. I've done everything that we've got to do today. That's the... Go ahead, Mr. Mayhew.
Members of the court, we can go to the briefing items now and get to item number 11B, which is a transportation bond program discussion. Mr. Skinner is here to address the court at this time.
Morning.
Morning.
Commissioner, that choir sang a whole lot better than I think I ever would hope to. So just ask my wife, she'll tell you.
A couple of them out there sounded just like me.
No. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. We'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to follow up with the court regarding our last conversation on the transportation bond program. And you may recall from our last conversation, we laid out a format that looks very similar to this. And as we go through this presentation, you may find that some of our questions overlap, and it's partly because they can fall in either one of these categories. So if we get to a point where we've already seen some of those questions and we've already reached consensus, then we'll move on in the interest of time. In our last conversation, we talked about the program goals being there was a mention of the focus on moving people. We talked about drainage improvements and how they should be included in the program. Economic development should not be a primary goal. And the interest was from the court was to have a transportation program that did not result in increase in property taxes.
So you're going to need to go ahead and advance.
And so I want to follow up with those particular goals, and you'll see some of the questions that we have here. When we talked about moving people, were we talking about moving people, vehicles, or both? And I would just point out at this particular time that since our last conversation, we received some feedback from the Criminal District Attorney's Office that indicates that counties may be restricted from being able to fund mass transit projects as part of our county bond program. So with that in mind, you'll see that there's not a lot of references in this presentation to that. But when we talk about moving people, there are also opportunities that may exist for trails, for side paths, bicycle paths, and that sort of thing. Since, over the last several weeks, we have made an effort to call some of the cities that participated in our 2006 program. And I would just point out that at least one of the cities had commented on or questioned whether or not that would be an opportunity in this particular program. So I wanted to get your...
You're talking about the transit or the trails?
The trails and the bike. In this particular case, it had to do with a pedestrian crosswalk to a school.
Okay. In the DA's office, the transit, I had understood in the last, because we did not specifically highlight transit, that's the reason we could not spend those funds on transit. In your mind, is there a different reason why we can't go forward with that?
And Judge, and let me make sure I understand your question. You said because you did not highlight transit?
Yes, in the last one, we called it a transportation bond issue. We did not, and we talked about highways and things along that lines. But it was my understanding that we did not specifically mention in the verbiage that we were anticipating spending money on transit-related activities. And that was the reason why it was later determined that we could not spend it on it. We could do it on the intersections, but that we could not spend it on the track itself from that standpoint.
And to answer your question, sorry,
yes, please.
To answer your question directly, Judge, that is incorrect. The law does not allow the funding of counties to fund massive transit projects. We looked at the law on that, and if you would like for us to kind of brief the court on why that is and what you can do, we'd be more than happy to put that together.
I'd like for you to do that, and especially in light, we talked about this a little bit at the most recent TRTC meeting, Tarrant Regional Transportation Coalition, and I would like for you to get with their attorney, with the transit's attorney, Frank Stevenson, and see, because they at least have indicated that it has been done in many other places. Now, I don't know whether it's been done by cities or whether it's been done by counties, and I know that there's a big difference. But if you would, please, I would appreciate, before you do that briefing to the court, that you have had a chance to communicate with them.
Absolutely. Look, I'll get with the lawyer who did that research in our office. We'll put it together for the court and talk to their lawyer as well.
Very much like to know where the specific prohibition is.
Absolutely.
Chris, I mentioned that Harris County was doing some things with transit, and what they're doing, they have a bracketed bill that goes back to, and I will email this to you, I want to say about 2005 or 4, that allows the county over 2.2 million, and there's probably a bunch of other restrictions. It was bracketed for Harris County. To provide transit for seniors that were going to events, we're going to, each commissioner in Harris County has buses.
Has a bus.
They have buses.
Yeah.
And they take people on field trips, for lack of a better term. Take them to casinos. They take them all kinds of places. And I'm not saying that's what we do, but there's a bill and there's a way that they're doing it. And Fort Bend, according to what I've got here, Fort Bend County, which is a much smaller county than ours, is also doing similar types of things, and they've got a bill. So it can and is being done, it appears.
And to be specific, Commissioner Fickus, absolutely, there are other methods in order to get that counties can employ to accomplish that. But for the direct, and specifically for this bond project and for the funding of that transit situation through this bond project, the answer to that question is no. We'll bring the specifics back to this court, but there are ways to get there. The law does allow different methods, and we'll outline that as well in our presentation.
They're doing it.
You as attorneys, just, always your answer is no. I want you to always look at it from a standpoint, you're supposed to tell me how to say yes.
Yes, sir.
They're doing it in conjunction with their transit authority in
Absolutely.
Harris County, which is Houston Metro.
Absolutely.
So they're doing it, providing funding to Houston Metro, just like we were trying to do with Trinity Metro.
I'm familiar with the Harris County situation. I'm not familiar with Fort Bend, but I'll look at that as well.
Well, and certainly, I'm going to say this at the risk of sounding redundant. Obviously, I'm equally as interested in what more you're able to provide us insight on. with really the goal is with this bond program, and I know we're going to get deeper into the presentation, but that we are providing equitable solutions. So regardless of where you fall on the economic spectrum, where you live in the county, that you have transportation options afforded to you. So I'd be really curious to see if we're not able to do mass transit, which obviously I know with, whatever that we're proposing in terms of an amount, that could be, totally taken up by one mass transit project. But in lieu of that, which I'm not suggesting that we do that, but in lieu of that, I do want to make sure that we have explored all the ways that we can get people, specifically for Precinct 2, to school, to work, to the doctor. So
Yes, Commissioner, and absolutely. The legal question, of course, was, are we able to do that with this bond project? And
Yeah.
I think now the court's wanting us to kind of expand that and give more guidance on what could be done.
What could be done.
So
Thank you.
We'll do that.
Very good. Well, we may move on from that until we have a little better clarification. We can go to the second question. Should priority be given to shovel-ready projects? And I know that this is something that when we talk about priority, some of these questions probably will pertain to the project evaluation committee. That may be part of the role that they may have. But in order to give them some guidance, we would just simply ask for some feedback from the court on, do we want to wait or prioritize those projects that are ready to go right now?
Define shovel-ready.
When we had our conversation last time, we talked about projects that could be implemented within 5 years. And so we might want to define what implement means. And are we talking about the start of design? Are we talking about the start of construction? But we can talk about
got the money.
I'm sorry?
I would say if they've got the money, it's shovel-ready.
A good definition. And so we would look at whether or not those projects are funded, and the cities will have to provide that information to us. So
I would perhaps add one thing to shovel-ready, meaning having the money. I would say money plus authority equals shovel-ready.
that's a good point. A lot of this information we'll obtain from the cities, and probably what our plan is to develop an application page that the cities would need to complete, and it would be able to provide that kind of information on the page, so it would be easier for us to evaluate. And then finally, should funding be based on geographic equity? I know we talked a little bit about this. In our 2006 program, we had projects that were submitted to us. Many of them, I think the City of Arlington, we had about 17 projects funded. City of Mansfield had quite a few, but we didn't necessarily see a whole lot of projects in other areas. Is that something that the court wishes to weigh in on, or should we approach this the same way we did in 2006 and simply call the projects and we receive those projects as they come in?
Well, to me, this is kind of connected to the additional information that Chris is going to get for us, because all cities aren't created equal in terms of their size. So the last thing that I want to do is to poorly position some of the smaller cities who may not have the match dollars or may not have the same capability to respond to the call for projects, and maybe their project is significantly smaller and it's possible it may be a something that's more pedestrian friendly, like the example that you gave at the onset of your presentation, but it would still be just as meaningful to them. So I don't know. I think having that answer would help me to better weigh in on the geographic equity question.
Well, I guess first off, I'd like for there to be call projects. Maybe with some of our smaller cities, what we could say to them is, if you're really, in a cash crunch right now, as far as the match goes, and this is, I may tomato small size, but if you might be able to approach the commissioner or the judge who's going to have an allocation in this particular one.
Oh, really?
I hope that you might be able to approach one of them and ask the commissioner or judge to give up a portion of their designated monies to be the match. Instead of asking the commissioner maybe to come in and do the whole project, maybe it would be, part would be done out of designated funds, part would be done out of as the ranking. Because again, we had the committee and they ranked, but if a small city couldn't come up with the money for the, for the match, then they couldn't even submit a project, and we couldn't determine whether or not it was a critical project within the overall parts of the county. So
we had a similar project in the previous bond issue. That was a road in the city of Everman. The city of Everman has no dollars, basically. But we were able to get this project funded as a listed project under the bond program, because the commissioner of Precinct 1 entered into an interlocal agreement with the city of Everman to participate in the cost of building the project. And then there were some discretionary funds that were involved in squaring it up, truing it up. We got there.
And in the 2006 program, that was one of the reasons why we wanted to, I think the Commissioners Court included a discretionary portion to the program, as for instances like that, or in some cases where the project simply wasn't on the list at all, but they'd submitted it to us, but it just didn't rise to that. But it was, to your point, Commissioner, it was important to that community. And so that was an opportunity for it to still be funded.
moving on.
We'll move forward with the call for projects, similar to as we did in 2006, but certainly let us know if you have any other comments on that. Program structure. The amount of the program we heard in our last conversation was $400 million, and that the court did want to retain discretionary funding, and that the court was fine with those funds either paying for the entire project or for just a portion, that the funding should be open to a broad range of projects, and we didn't feel like we got a real consensus on the discussion over project categories, but that's partly one of the questions that we have for you. So the items for clarification, we have put on there, one of the questions we had, we mentioned the $400 million amount. Does the court wish to evaluate what that amount should be based on the project submittals as they come in, or some of the priorities that may come from the project evaluation committee, or do we move forward with a $400 million amount and we apply that? So it's similar to what we did in 2006. We started with a $200 million amount and applied that to the projects that we received.
Well, the one thing I might also say about 2006 was I think that $200 million, that was not the only project that we had on our bond issue.
That's correct.
The one underlying statement was it's not going to result in us having to increase taxes as a result of the total bond project.
Right.
And so I think that as we approach the possibility of a bond project in November, we do have to look at the transportation, but I also would ask that facilities and that as a court we look at what other things do we potentially look toward doing in the form of a bond issue. I've been on the court for 24 years. We did, I think, a bond issue in '98. We did one in 2006. We haven't done one, I don't believe, since then.
No.
we don't do them every other year. And so, you know, I want us to be deliberate. I don't want us, if we've got something that we feel like needs to be considered for the bond issue, or we think over the next 5 to 10 years it's going to need to be considered for a bond issue, I would like for us to explore the possibilities of getting it on there for the November. We know we've heard conversations and had conversations with our district attorney about a building in that particular, you know, for that particular area, and it may not be just for the DA's office, but, you know, it could be for criminal, or for just justice, criminal justice, whatever it may be. We need to consider doing something. We have had in the past dollars set aside for administration building renovation. It may be that we want to explore that possibility of something for administration building. So those are just two other ideas that I think at least need to be discussed as we're trying to approach this, you know, possible bond election in November. And I don't know what else may be out there. I know we've talked about renovations in the criminal courts building, Tim Curry building. So and there may be some other things that we're going to look at. But
if we're going to broaden it beyond just transportation, then it needs to be in the administration, in the county administrator's office, and not being run out of transportation.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying that this all kind of came to pass as a result of Commissioner Fickus mentioning it might be time to do that, but I just, you know, I'm of a nature that, again, I don't like doing it every other year or every 3 or 4 years. We put distance between our bond issues, and I don't see this being any different. But I think we need to look at, in the two things that I've mentioned, the DA's desires for a building or another place to office their folks, as well as an administration, possibility of an administration building. And, you know, I think I don't know that I am sold on it. I mean, there's a couple of alternatives we can look at. The city just bought a 400,000 square foot building for some amount of money. And I think that's more space than they might need. So we could look at either maybe a joint city-county building. I hate to move away from the old courthouse. I love the view, but you know, that's at least a part of a consideration, if they would even consider it. And if they wouldn't, then they might at least have some vacant space that we could move into while we were doing renovations on this building, or potentially on any other buildings that we might consider a part of the bond issue.
Randy, I would think it might make more sense to I mean, we're talking 400 million, and I would say we won't exceed that, but if our cities only come up with 250 million, you put in the discretionary funds that are allocated yearly. If that's what we do, that's what we did last time, every year for 10 years. And then that becomes the total, and that may not come to 400 million. It may be something different. So smaller. So it might be better to see, where we are with our cities, and put the max at that, but let's wait and see what they turn in.
Well, the only thing I would say about that is that, I know November seems like a long time away.
No.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. And so, I think if we're going to have to very quickly move to, one, determining what issues we might be willing to put on a bond issue, and then two, defining exactly what we expect those costs to be for each one of those. So, I think as far as if we're going to do it through call for projects, then that means we've got to, by the end of January, almost have all the cities have submitted their projects, or at least come up with a timeline that gets us a pretty definite amount by the end of.
I think he's got that in here, but I don't know that January's the.
No, but we can talk about the schedule at that time unless you want to cover that now. But
No, if you got it in here, let's move on.
So we'll move on with that in mind. And then the other question we had is, does the Commissioners Court want to increase the amount of funding for the discretionary portion? If you recall, in 2006, the 4 precincts received $10 million as part of the original bond program.
Then I'd like to increase it by at least $10 million and maybe by
50 million.
50 million. And I would like to be able to spend mine early. 50 million would be what I would suggest.
But okay.
So, may I comment?
Sure.
So, one of the things we just heard, and I think it was Commissioner Fickus who brought it up, as we determine that dollar amount and how much we allocate for, those are decisions that we can make at a later date depending on what the size of the bond package is. But going and calling for projects now will give us a better idea of what the need is out there, and we can price that need and then simply build to an amount. And we very well may need to go ahead and set a maximum amount somewhere down the line. I don't think now's the time that you need to set that. I think you need to see what the need is first, then make a determination as far as the allocations, independent allocations to the court members, and then set that. If we bring in a facility issue, then that adds to that to eventually we get to a point that we can designate what's going to be in the bond package and how much we're willing to spend.
You know, one of the things that I agree with you 100%. One of the things that we might do as we go out on this call for projects is to indicate that we are going to spread this out over a 10-year period, because there's going to be a lot of cities right now who are going to be cash strapped and are not going to be willing to make any sort of a commitment probably for at least the next year and maybe 2. Now, there may be some that are shovel ready, and that may be one of the key factors that we need to know as we go through this, is when would you anticipate having the cash to be able to match? Because if we had a bunch that we could do the first couple of years, you know, those may end up getting a higher priority based upon the ability to fund early. And it will also encourage those cities who think, golly, I'm strapped right now, and it may be a couple of years before I can recover from this COVID deal. So they may want to say they're looking for that money in 2024, 2025, or 26.
So Randy, did we have on the 2006 package, did we have, when we went a call for projects, did we have a certain time period that we expected them to begin projects?
We asked for projects that were ready to begin within 3 years at that time, keeping in mind that was prior to the
2008.
Exactly.
Didn't happen.
And then we managed, but then when that happened, what we did, we managed the process. And we built we kept the tax rate where it needed to be, and we made it work.
But if we said 3 years this year, it would cut off a lot.
Yeah, I think 5 is the...
Whatever that number is.
But we're at a historic time on interest rates. And when you can do a project like this and possibly get interest rates in and around 1% versus a historic average of 3%, I mean, you're saving tens of millions of dollars. 50 million, $100 million is the total cost. And not only the county, but all these cities that are participating, if they're doing bonds, it's the same thing for them. They're saving tremendous amounts of money if they can, step up and say, yeah, we can do that in the next 3 to 5 years or something like that.
We know of a couple of cities that have already told us they are pursuing bond program, one of them being the city of Fort Worth. So
yeah.
It makes sense.
So I want to add a layer to this. I don't really know how it all fits together, so you're going to have to educate me. But with the change in administration and their discussions about infrastructure programs, how would that affect our bond?
Well, I think one of the things that we've seen over the last year or so, just looking at some of the grant opportunities that become available. In fact, that's something I would cover a little bit later in our presentation. Okay. But we've had at least one build grant those are federal grants that are made available to the current or the previous administration, I guess you'd say. I don't know what's going to happen with those grants moving forward. I haven't heard anything in particular, but those build grants were still in place, and Tarrant County benefited from that on one of our projects.
We had Grapevine Highway from DFW Connector 114 going back into Colleyville. That section was a 50-50. Tarrant County at $6 million, Grapevine at $6 million, and the feds came in with stimulus money. This was
the largest stimulus project.
And put it in. We were able to take our money, put it on extending 26, basically Grapevine Highway into Colleyville. And Grapevine took some of their money and some of ours and are working on that Bass Pro deal forever and ever. But,
Yeah, those are the types of federal opportunities that may come along if we continue with these grant programs and stimulus funds. I know that there may be another push for a build grant within Tarrant County, from what I understand from the city of Fort Worth. And so
some of those we were able to leverage, as opposed to a 1-to-1, which is what we talked about with the cities. We were able to leverage 10-to-1 and more, and more. So those are really the kind of things that we look for, and by having a pot of money, that will put us, it seems like at the end of every year, they're looking for things, and if we've got money to put in and we can actually start it, sometimes we can get tremendous leverage off of our dollars. And so that's why I think Commissioner Fickus is right. If we can, the more money we can set aside for something along these lines, the better off we are and the bigger chance we have of being able to get some of that.
My next question is a bit almost like a leading question, if you will, in the sense that we're going to be, we talked about this program being open to a broad range of projects. And so as we receive project submittals, and again, this is something that would need to coordinate with the project evaluation committee and our consultant, but the evaluation of those projects, it would be difficult to evaluate one against the other unless they're of like kind. And so we would have roadway improvement projects that would come in. We may have, the drainage projects that we discussed, which are they're related to the roadway improvement, but they're a different animal. And so that may be, I place this in here just as a discussion point for the court to understand that in the evaluation process, I would recommend those be evaluated within the same kind, if you will, so that we have a good, fair evaluation. And again, this is something that we would coordinate with the project evaluation committee on. And then the last question that we have goes back to what I mentioned earlier regarding the categories for pedestrian, bike, trail projects. This was in 2006. We did have projects that were submitted to us that were trail projects. When they were evaluated with all of the others, given the goals of the court at the time, those projects dropped down the list and were not funded. And so we're just following up with the court on whether or not we wish to see those projects included. Should we weight those projects in any particular fashion?
Well, I think on some of the pedestrian bike trails, we need to look at where we have gaps, where one city's done something and another city maybe hadn't quite gotten their part done to provide the connectivity. And I know we've got some really good hike and bike trails throughout the county, but there's still a lot of them that probably do need that connection made from one point to point A to point B, if that's what the cities want to do.
My preference would be in the unincorporated area, if we're the missing link, then possibly put them on a priority list, or maybe look for some of us to spend it discretionarily. I have circled the bikes around the building before and will continue. I want to move people. And that's just my focus.
I would like to include them. I'm certainly hearing from the cities on what the needs are, but, you know, with the reality that with a county our size and with people experiencing increasing issues with being employed or trying to remain employed, and the long-term ramifications of COVID, you know, we already were in a situation where not enough people have cars. And so we got to know that people, if they don't have access to a bus or if they don't have access to a ride share, I mean, we got to think about how they're getting around. So I want to include it as we further kind of evaluate what all we're able to do. I realize, you know, we can go a mile wide and an inch deep versus having greater impact on particular type projects, but you know, not everyone has a car.
And Commissioner, one thing we might could focus on, and to follow up with Commissioner Ficus's comment, is look at those areas where there are gaps and the services, there's no connectivity.
Sure.
That might be something that might be of
Yeah, or
importance.
even, I guess here you had mentioned for these regional trail projects, but maybe there are other opportunities for us to partner with COGS, you know, so that we are contributing to kind of the larger system approach. So.
Okay. Moving on to some other questions we had to do with the possibility of the Commissioners Court including earmarks for specific projects. I know we've done some work with the West Tarrant Transportation Initiative. There may be opportunities with regard to TxDOT's rural arterial expansions, and I know, you know, we've mentioned here FM 1187 being one that is just seems to be seeing increased volume all the time. That's certainly a high priority. And then FM 156 is not fully funded. Those types of arterial improvement projects.
730.
730 would absolutely. This is an example of the 2006 program. We did do a handful of these, and so that's something that we could carry forward if the court wishes. And then I also included Commissioners Court identified priorities, and the reason why I listed that here is because I think it's important. In the 2006 program, we requested projects from the cities, and we coordinated with TxDOT for projects that we would partner with them on. But there wasn't necessarily a county, some of those, I don't recall any projects that the county Commissioners Court said these are the ones that we specifically want to be funded in this program. And so this is maybe an opportunity if the court sees for various types of, maybe including specific projects that may be of a priority for the court. They may be in the unincorporated area. There may be certain areas where we can improve 90-degree turns, for instance, on some of our county roads. Maybe look at areas where there may be some areas where the shoulders may be enhanced for safety reasons or what have you. So that may be something the Commissioners Court wishes to consider.
How many pages do you have in this presentation? I'm just trying to figure out whether Mr. Manius needs to order dinner or not. I don't mean lunch, I mean dinner.
Well, in all fairness, we've done most of the talking, so.
Well, I understand. I'm just trying to figure out whether we need to order dinner.
I just got to finish ordering lunch. For the court.
We'll keep moving forward. And then also, does the court wish to include any reserves that would be eligible for the TxDOT local? We talked about those grants earlier. And we talked about the one other opportunity would be the National Highway System, roads and bridges. I think some of that has been presented to the RTC recently. And we talked about how there are some areas that may need to be looked at sooner than later. And so that may be an opportunity for the court to, again, in those specific categories, to define our involvement. With regard to the project criteria, we heard that any public partnering agency should be allowed to participate. That may also include independent school districts. In 2006 program, we did partner with a school district on a project. Projects should be funded at 50-50. They should be implemented within 5 years, and they should be shovel-ready, and then drainage improvement projects aimed at improving safety of the roadway system. So some of our follow-up questions to that.
Next page.
Yep, it's not working here. Should the local match requirement be lower from some of the smaller cities? And I guess this kind of goes back to the issue we discussed earlier with regard to the difficulty that some of our communities may have in participating at a 50-50 level. Or should we continue with what we did in 2006 and require 50-50 match on the call for projects?
I think there are other ways to lower that cost to the city without lowering the 50-50 requirement.
I think the 50-50 requirement needs to be in there, and if there's a special exception, then those cities need to either plead their case or do something. But, I mean, the whole purpose here is to leverage county dollars by at least a 1-to-1.
Very good. We'll keep that as 50-50.
There's other dollars that can be gotten either through COG or through direct from textile.
In lots of ways.
So.
And then we mentioned in our last discussion about multi-phase projects, just clarification. It's probably more of a, again, project evaluation committee issue of do we want to fund phases of a project or fund the entire corridor? And there are negatives to that. So in one instance, if we have an entire corridor that are made up of multiple phases, we don't know if all of those phases will be constructed. And of course, the time just draws out that much longer in the process. So maybe something for the project evaluation to consider. And when we go out and ask for the call for projects, please submit to us your projects in this fashion.
And then are you suggesting? Oh.
I don't have a problem funding discrete pieces of a project if that piece makes sense as a standalone.
And again, that would be something perhaps the project evaluation committee could recommend from that perspective.
And that was going to be my question. Are you suggesting that this be something that, as the projects are submitted and looking at the criteria that the committee is going to use, that would be part of the criteria?
Correct.
Okay.
And then we talked a little bit about the TIF and the tourist districts. And so just a little bit of clarification here. If a project is submitted to us that falls within a TIF district, this is a clarification from our last discussion. We're not necessarily saying, no, you can't submit that project, but we would want to make sure, from what I understand, that the TIF district is not funding that project and then also receiving county bond funds.
Right.
Okay. Should neighborhood streets be eligible for funding? In this case, there are in some instances, there may be streets that just simply they're residential and they just want to overlay it.
I don't go with that.
Keep these to the arterial.
Improving mobility, well, decreasing congestion and improving mobility need to be, I think, the two important things. I mean, there's access and there's many other components, but by just going in and doing a residential street that the city probably should be doing, and it's not a thoroughfare street, doesn't benefit the county overall.
If there are over overriding needs to do a residential street,
Discretionary.
then that's discretionary funding.
Very good. And then finally, should cost be reimbursable, such as staff time? And the reason why I bring this up is because we've had at least one city in our program that when the project was constructed, they had actually submitted to us a request for reimbursement of their staff time to oversee.
No.
Okay.
No, we can consider that as part of the match,
Sure.
but I wouldn't want to pay cash for that.
Very good. So with regard
Might
to...
be stretching it to even give it a part of the match.
Yeah. What city was that? Was it a big city?
Yes.
A real big city?
Yeah, very big city.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's sneaky.
So project evaluation and selection. So we talked about a project evaluation committee, and that the court would appoint an equal number to that committee. And you see the criteria that we're working from at this point. Certainly, we have not heard anything from either of you with regard to the criteria, so we would look at moving forward with that.
I'd like to add to the evaluation criteria, and I don't know exactly what that looks like, and certainly community support would somewhat lend to this, but some type of equity tool. And when we talk about whether, if it's a priority for us to have geographic representation or whatever, however it moves forward with a transit something, or, I mean, you know, what Chris is gonna work out for us. That goes back to my point in making sure we're talking about moving people, understanding that not everyone has a car. So we need to look at what are the other ways that we can move people around.
The only thing about geographical balance is that there may be certain projects that will be of a region, and they can't, you know, we could do one project that would completely wipe out a particular precinct from all the dollars, any further dollars, but it was a project that would have, like Southeast Connector,
Sure.
which is supposed to be a boondoggle anyway, I guess. But
yeah, I read that.
Watch it now.
But that, you know, that would completely wipe out everything in your particular area, or in your, maybe in both of y'all's areas. And so we've got to define what a regional project is, and that cannot be a part of the geographical balance, in my opinion.
And that's a very good point, Judge. I think this goes back to the discussion we had a moment ago with regard to the county commissioners court identified priorities. And that may be an opportunity where those would be identified in that particular area. Let me just make a suggestion here, and that when we talked in our last discussion, we talked about two categories: the discretionary piece and then all of the other, essentially all the rest. If the court would be interested in adding one more category, we could look at a county initiatives section. So you would have your local call for projects, perhaps that's $200 million or whatever amount the court wishes. You would have $100 million that may be identified for the for the discretionary piece of that, which would essentially be $20 million apiece. And then the remainder of that would be a court initiatives category where, judges, your examples would fall into that area, so that they're separating out. They're not competing against some of the larger regional projects.
It seems to me that in the 06 transportation issue, we considered projects that we called on-system projects, state highway projects, or whatever.
156? Was 156 an on-system project?
I believe
Yes.
so.
Up through Haskell?
Yeah.
I don't.
Funded partly by the FAA.
Projects that we did. There was one out in the Benbrook area we did.
377.
377.
And Commissioner, to your point, in 06, that was actually a set-aside amount of that was for those particular projects. And so now in this case, we could simply ask that all the projects be submitted to us as our call, but adding that other category might separate those larger scale, major investment projects out so that they're not competing against the local cities. Just something to consider.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay. And then our other question with regard to this section, do we want to keep the evaluation committee at 15 members?
Keep what now?
Keep the project evaluation committee at 15 members. Is that what the court wishes? I would recommend that.
That's big enough.
I'm good with that.
Sure.
And then the last two questions I think we've already covered, and that is the project evaluation committee's role in helping to evaluate and establish the criteria that we talked about. That would be their role, is to help us with that. And then program implementation and administration. We talked about any scope changes would be approved by court. Support of a consultant to help us with the program. Just questions I think we've already answered. Should the time limit be extended beyond 5 years? I believe what we've heard is we want to keep that at 5 years. Do you want to continue? Right now we're sending all of our payment authorization forms to you for signatures. It's more of a process. I'm assuming you'd want to continue to see those.
Yes.
Does a court wish to retain the excess funds policy? And you recall that the court adopted this.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I'm not going to ask.
Yes.
The reason is that you know what the reason is. Okay.
We'll retain them.
Just over here laughing.
I saved the most money and I had to give it all away. 75% of it.
Good.
We're so proud of you.
No, I really think you had to give away 80%.
Probably did, yeah.
And we all appreciate that.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
And what we did in 2006 with regard to enhancements is we've told the cities that it's going to be it won't be the county's bond program that will fund landscape lighting, park benches, things of that nature. We'd only be funding the actual roadway improvement.
Correct.
I assume we would continue with that same approach.
Not streetscape.
Now, when we construct a street so that they could then come back in and put in those amenities if they wanted to without having to tear anything out or...
Sure.
No,
it's a good clarification. I think that's something that we would look at what their requirements were as part of the city, their regulations or their ordinance, and then we would build to that or fund to that.
We didn't do sidewalks, did we?
In some cases, what we said was that if sidewalks were, again, if it was part of the roadway improvement project, much like underground drainage, if it were, you could upsize those if it were part of the scope of the project. And then finally, on this section, we may want to look for some assistance from the consultant beyond just helping us with the implementation of the program. This is a large program that we would be looking at. We may want to seek some assistance in the administration of it, depending on the size of it or what the scope would be at that time.
Yeah. I believe we did that the last time.
Well, much of the administration was carried out in our office, but that was also
a consultant.
We did have a consultant in the implementation phase. Yes.
You are beginning to make Vinny look very good.
Okay, we'll move to the schedule. And this is something that we definitely want to make sure we're bring by you, and that is our hope is that our plan is to bring to you the policy, which is going to be derived from our conversations. We'll bring that to you in January. I estimate that or anticipate that once the court approves the policy, we would have those letters.
Can you go back one sheet? I think you.
Oh, heavens.
No, I think you.
Oh, am I on the wrong? Yeah, we can go back one.
Yeah, to that sheet. Isn't that what you're talking about?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
And so with the approval of the program policy, we will have our our notice letters ready, and those can go out as soon as that occurs. So that would be in January. And then we would ask the cities to get those projects back to us no later than April, probably the end of March. It's a short time frame, but the cities, I'm sure, will need time to prepare their submittals. We hope to be able to bring on our consultant sooner than later, and then we may come back to you in March and ask for you to appoint your members to the project evaluation committee. And then next page, March through April, coordinate with TxDOT and COG, and we scheduled it purposefully that way so that we would be able to have our consultant on board to help us with that process. And then we are looking at the May through August timeframe for the evaluation.
Next page.
Did not switch? Okay.
Thank you.
And so we're looking at that time frame for when these projects would be evaluated and prioritized. That's a very short time frame, but we think that hopefully should be able to get that done. And if I recall correctly, and GK, you can help me with this, but the court would need to call the election, is it, I believe, 90 days in advance? Or 90, I think it's 90 days.
I've asked our bond counsel to give us a timeline on both the May and the November. I'm going to tell them not to even do the May, but just do the November, because we won't be able to hit the target for a May election anyway. And those are the only 2 dates.
You're talking about May of 21 versus May of 22.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I wasn't, I never even, thought that we could come close to that.
Yeah, how are we going to do it in May?
No, we couldn't do it in May.
No. You're talking May of 2022.
If we were, no, he was,
Believe me, let us just get your timelines.
give us timelines.
Okay.
That's pretty much all I have to share with you, but we wanted to get your feedback. We'll start working on the policy based on what we've heard, and we'll go from there. And then when we hear more on the transit piece, we'll incorporate that.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So now we're going to a second briefing item, and this is going to be item number C. This is participation in the Bedford Tax Increment Financing Reinvestment Zone number 1. Ms. McMillan is here to address the court.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. The City of Bedford has established a 57-acre tax increment financing reinvestment zone, and this one, as you'll see when they give the presentation, is a little different than we're normally used to seeing. It's actually 10 non-contiguous areas that they are calling area development zones. And this TERS was established primarily to facilitate the development and redevelopment of one of those zones, which is the Bedford Commons area. And that redevelopment and development will include multi-use residential, light commercial, retail, and municipal facilities. And the TERS itself will fund approximately $24 million in street and intersection improvements, street lighting, drainage, water, sewer, and other improvements over the 30-year life of the zone. Representatives from the City of Bedford, Jimmy Stathatos, the city manager, and then the consultant, David Pettit, are here today to give a presentation about the zone and the participation they are requesting from the county. I'm going to ask David and Jimmy to come forward.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. Our mayor could not be here today, so he asked me to read some prepared comments, brief comments, and then I'll defer to David. Mayor Michael Boyder, regretfully, I'm unable to attend today's Commissioners Court out of an abundance of caution. However, I want to express my appreciation to Judge Whitley, the Commissioners, and the Court for allowing us to come before you today. We are here to ask for your participation in an exciting project for the City of Bedford. After much debate and with the assistance of David Pettit, Economic Development, the Bedford City Council staff and I have created a project for Bedford Commons that we believe will make our residents proud. Through the TERS being presented to you, we believe that this gives us an opportunity to create a unique development that will draw people to Bedford and will become an economic engine for future growth. This project has already generated positive attention in the media, with developers, specialty retailers, and unique restaurateurs reaching out to the city expressing interest in this opportunity. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today, and I wish everyone a happy holiday. And thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Judge, members of the commissioners, it's a pleasure to be here. I will make this brief, and we really appreciate the time. And if I can just say this, you make governing fun. It's just fun to sit back there and watch you guys have fun up here. It's good to see you guys. So, but I will be brief to the best of my ability. I know GK will run that clock. TERS, as Lisa mentioned, that we have created is 57 acres made up of 10 non-contiguous ADZs. That's a term I came up with, area development zones, wholly located within the city of Bedford. The land that's included is either commercial buildings that are well positioned for redevelopment, vacant land that is well positioned for new development as well. The Bedford Commons, as Lisa mentioned, is within ADZ1. 3/4 of the property that's within this TERS is tax exempt. So what we're trying to do is bring this property and make it taxable. So this will be new revenue that's coming into the taxing jurisdictions. The purpose of the TIF is to encourage private development that will yield additional tax revenue to all the taxing jurisdictions. So this is a map. You can see ADZ1, that's the Bedford Commons, better known as the City Hall Municipal Complex. Also, ADZ10 and ADZ2 are publicly owned properties. We had gone through a lot of discussion, and there's been a lot of work in history with the project related to the Bedford Commons. We hired good Fulton and Farrell planners to update a plan that focused on creating a market-based plan, not just a pie in the sky, within the limited contiguous city-owned land that aligns with the goals of the city council and the citizens. One of the things we heard was no apartments. That was very clear. You've probably seen the many years of discussion in Bedford about apartments. So states allow for non-contiguous boundaries for the creation or amendment of a TERS district. That was put into the statute about 2005, so you probably haven't seen just a whole lot of them. Boundaries were created, and their base year will be January 1 of 2020. Through the creation ordinance that was approved on 10/27 of this year. We worked with city staff to include parcels that are prime for an increase in taxable value. So vacant parcels for new development, parcels for redevelopment, and tax exempt property. This is just a little bit more descriptor of some of the properties that are included in there. Outside of the city-owned lands, which are 1, 2, and 10, there's several properties, vacant restaurants along 183. There's a 10,000 square foot vacant Luby's. There's several other buildings that are in dire need of redevelopment. But the main focus here is to have these really kind of feed the increment that's going to occur in ADZ1.
That's the question in my mind, David. If you've got a bunch of non-contiguous properties, how do you quantify the increment?
It's actually quite simple. I brought a page. The properties we only have, I'm going to look at it right here, 12 properties that make up property IDs. So it's going to be, if you consider versus downtown Fort Worth, where you have hundreds, if not 1,000 different property owners that make up the ownership.
But you've got a zone that you're trying to uplift.
Yes, and so the sole purpose of those other 9 zones is, and you'll see as far as my increment model, 3/4 of the private investment is going to be in ADZ1. So the idea was from the city council was if we can include these other areas that are at their lowest value, and we can have that kind of seed some of the improvements in ADZ1, we'll be able to move that forward, and we'll be able to do that quicker. Kind of, and I just heard some mention of the Pier 1 building. I remember wanting to capture that to help seed some of the Trinity River vision. And now that would be coming off the tax rolls. I think they're voting on that tonight at City Hall. So this is just a little bit of a overview of the different properties. But the overall proposed development plan, it's located adjacent to the current City of Bedford Municipal Center, approximately 30 acres, mostly vacant, with easy access to nearby roadway infrastructure. It's strategically proximate to city single-family residential and a trail system of existing parks. This is the plan we came up with. We heard from a lot of people that we wanted a community gathering place, a place you want to be. We heard, let's be aspirational. So what you have here is a network of a lot of amenities that's a community gathering place. In the center, if you can see there, that's retail. So you can kind of imagine how that kind of opens up. And then you have what's supporting that is the private development of about 185 townhomes. These are some pictures, some character images. Doesn't seem to want to move. There it goes. These are some character images of really an outdoor people place with the restaurant spillover and that 20,000 square feet. That can be increased, but with retail the way it is now, I think some ghost kitchens and the like. This is just one of my favorite places we've been going. Have y'all ever been to the Hub, 30A in Florida? It's got a great, it's got restaurants that kind of surround artificial turf, and it's a great place for families to gather. They have festoon lighting. It's a community gathering place, and so we drew our inspiration, or at least we provided the direction to Good Fulton and Farrell. We wanted this to be a fun place and a place that the community could gather. So you can see that this has high public amenities with an outdoor movie theater, a splash pad, ability for food trucks. And Commissioner Brooks, this does not want to be responsive. If you can see that small slide there, I want to talk about that zone. We have $108 million worth of anticipated private development. We have already had a lot of interest in ADZ1. ADZ1, by my current estimates, is about $75 million. So 3/4 of the private investment is going to be in that primary area of ADZ1. The other areas, while significant, they don't move the needle as much as ADZ1. So the primary purpose here is to get ADZ1 funded. So
does ADZ1, does that include any of what was called the old Bedford Boys Ranch?
No, sir. That's fine.
Which now has been renamed. I was corrected several times at City Council. Generations Park, yes. I was corrected several times. The participation assumptions, the city did create a 30-year TIF that on October 27th. The city is putting in 75% of its real property tax rate, and we are asking for the city to consider through discussions with county staff, 50%, and we are also in discussions with Tarrant County College for their 50%. Of course, we're not asking for anything from the hospital district. So what that yields is, over that 30-year period, a $146 million improvement, or total taxes generated, 24 going towards the TIF, 17 of that coming from the city, 4.6 coming from the county, and 2.6 coming from Tarrant County College. So with a net benefit of $122 million. So really we're taking tax-exempt property and we're putting it on the tax rolls. So this is a good thing. And we've allocated that through your standard public infrastructure improvements that are consistent with Chapter 311 of the tax code, with the inclusion of economic development grants. However, as Lisa will point out, the county cannot participate in those economic development grants by law. Happy to answer any questions, and I know Mr. Statatos is here as well. So thank you for your time.
I think, Roy, to answer maybe a little bit of your question, I visited with the city on this here probably a month ago, wasn't it, Lisa?
Time's
Something like
flying.
that, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And I too had some initial concern about, all these disconnected parts. But I think they've got a lot of things that are happening on those individual little pieces now, and those are the ones that are going to start immediately paying and making this thing really work. So they're really, it's to the TIF's advantage to have those in there. It's not, they're not, those little tracks are not dependent on the big one. The big one needs the little ones to kick it all off.
A couple of the small ones, just so for your all's edification, is the old Twin Peaks building. It's vacant. Its current taxable value is $28,000. So I'd like to be able to buy that building for $28,000, but I don't know if restaurants are the business to get into right now. But there's also a Fuddruckers, a vacant Fuddruckers over there, the Lubies. So we have a lot of depressed values, and so we see nothing but going up. And I think Commissioner Fickus hits the nail right on the head. The small areas are not dependent on the TIF, but the large area is dependent upon the small areas.
So what is your leverage ratio, David?
We're right at, so for every dollar that we're putting into infrastructure, it looks like we're leveraging, 25% is leveraging, 75% of the overall private investment. So it's pretty significant. So it's a 5 times, leverage on these public improvements. The other thing that's unique here is the city can sell this property through a direct sale without doing a public bid process, which can be messy in itself because you're stuck with a developer you don't want. And so the TIF allows for that public direct sale. Chapter 272 governs how public entities get rid of it. But if you're within a TIF and you say you want to sell that property directly, you can do so through direct negotiations. So that's one of the other things that we included in this TIF.
So as David mentioned, under this plan, they are asking the county to participate at 50%, and that would be over a 30-year period or until the maximum, and we would set it at the $4.684 million that they have noted, and they are going to be asking the college district to participate, and that would be approximately $2.6 million. So again, that's over the 30-year period. So we will be working then with David and the City of Bedford and bringing back an agreement after the first of the year, unless there's any questions or objections. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. David.
Now, members of the board, we could go to item A under the briefing. This is the current and emerging health issues, and ask Mr. Tenage to address the court at this time.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your patience.
You're usually the one that carries us into afternoon.
Yes, sir. I'll try to be brief, but with vaccines, there's a little bit more, as you know, but we'll try to make it quick.
We've never worried about you being brief.
Well, I've timed myself. Usually I'm done in 5 minutes. Some days longer. No. Yes, sir.
You can't say your name in 5 minutes.
Vinny stretch time. Okay. So for your situational awareness, of course, cases are continuing to rise in Tarrant County. I think we're adding about 1,500 or more cases today. Our total is above 122,000, 12 new deaths. Yesterday, it was a somber milestone for Tarrant County. We crossed 1,000 deaths in Tarrant County. So today we're at 1,026. Hospitalizations uptrend continues not just in Tarrant County, but in the entire TSAE. Another milestone in that as well today is the first time we're over 1,000 cases in our Tarrant County hospitals. I think the total number is 1,008. That would make our utilized capacity for COVID only compared to hospital beds at 22.35%. Of note, 215 of those are in ICU. That's about 21%. So in other words, 1 in 5 people that have COVID that are in the hospital are in an ICU setting. So 24 ICU beds remain in Tarrant County, which is better. Last time I came, I think, that we were down to like 18. We've been lower than that, but it has improved. I think they've added some hospital ICU beds as well, because that has helped. TSAE, which is the 19-county region, according to DSHS, we're at 17.09% in that area. Out of that, so that's a total of 2,674 cases. Our 1,008 hospitalized make about 38% of that load of the TSAE. 76 ICU beds remain for that 19-county region. So, again, just take a minute and I want to, address the public that this is a dire situation. We need to pay attention to all the public health guidelines being given, because these numbers are not sustainable from a hospital capacity standpoint, and they're just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the issue behind that is the level of disease in our community is too high. So here's the hospital trends. As you can see, we're just, continuing on an upward march. There's no break there. Next slide, please. Epi curves, we've shown this for weeks on end. We're in a huge surge, and it's not slowing down. Last time we had 10,000 cases in 6 days. Now we have 10,000 cases in 8 days. That's too fast. A very fast acceleration. We're above 120,000 cases. That's a lot of disease activity. More than 5% of the population has been infected with COVID-19 for Tarrant County over the course of the last year. Now, many have recovered, so don't get me wrong, but still, that's a lot of disease activity in our community. Next slide. Here's COVID-like illness, certainly uptrending. This is the highest we've seen COVID-like illness since the pandemic started. And it is, I wish I had the graph going all the way back. We are surpassing what we would normally see in a bad flu season peak. We're above, almost at 10%. Our positivity rate, I believe, is at 16%. It keeps fluctuating between 15 and 17, but it's nowhere good. What that tells you is that 1 in 6 people that we're testing, and we're testing them by the thousands. I mean, I know Mr. Manius has presented several times. Just the governmental entities doing testing in Tarrant County run several thousand, 23,000, 24,000 tests a week. And overall, we're seeing a 15% positivity. That's 1 in 6 people coming back positive. So certainly a lot of activity. I know there's been a lot of questions. Oh, you're testing more, that's why there's more cases. Well, okay, you're missing the point. There's disease out there. Testing is a case-finding tool, and we're finding those. Okay, well, went too fast. Whoops. Okay. So the point I was trying to make is, well, this is all bad news, but is the world ending, right? Are we all doomed? Well, no, it's not. Not at all. We know we have tools to fight it. They have been public health tools. Face masks, social distancing, limited gatherings, staying at home orders, all of these things work. We just need to do them together. If some people do it, others don't do it. If there are limitations on those tools, like we saw back in April, with the Reopen Texas plan, then things do go bad, and we certainly need to work together as a community. But now, finally, we have brought weapons to this fight. We have vaccines. And that's a big thing. I don't think people have really started to understand how much of that changes our fight. So far, the strategy was, let's limit the damage to our community so we can survive to get to this point. Now is the time for our community to rise up and take the vaccine and fight off this disease. So let me share with you some information about the vaccine. So when I prepared these slides yesterday, we had only one vaccine that had received the FDA emergency use authorization. That was the Pfizer vaccine. It got approval, I think, on December 13th. But this morning, there's breaking news as we're sitting in court that the FDA committee has green-lighted the Moderna vaccine, pending EUA, hopefully within this week. And as we saw with the Pfizer vaccine, ACIP, which is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, followed like within the next day with their recommendations and so forth. So we expect the same thing to happen with Moderna. And that will give us choices. It will alleviate some of the concerns about supply, storage, and I'll go into a little bit of that detail. So ACIP recommended that the Pfizer vaccine is approved for 16 years and older to receive the vaccine. Of course, we have all these criteria that we've talked about on how it's going to roll out with healthcare workers and others. As more supply comes, eventually it would get to everybody. Of importance, these two vaccines are the first mRNA vaccines to be approved. This is a historical moment. It is going to change how we develop vaccines going in the future. The possibilities are endless. So I have my little geek out moment, but this is, you know, quite a impressive feat that the pharma industry have pulled out. Next slide, please. So here's a little bit of detail, what they are, and I'll just try to be very brief because there's been a lot of questions on how these vaccines work. So typically what we see, you know, normal vaccine concept is you take a virus, you either kill the virus or make it weak, and then you inject it as a vaccine. Your body fights off against a dead virus or a weak virus. And there's been a lot of consternation. Can that make you sick? You know, like with the flu vaccine, we hear that every year. Oh, I took the flu shot, I got sick. Well, it's a dead virus, but you can't separate, okay, you took a virus and it's just going to help you. So this gets rid of all of that. What it does is it sends a messenger RNA and uses the normal immune response system, your body's normal function, to create the spike protein of the COVID-19 virus. The virus is not there. We're not even using the virus in this setup. We're just using a genetic blueprint, sending the message to our own body cells, create this spike protein so you have an antigen to fight. And then your body reacts to that antigen and creates the antibody. So it's a very, very smart technology. It takes care of all these issues, and that's why they were able to scale up so quickly, because you don't have to deal about culturing the virus, growing it, then killing it or making it weak, and then dealing with all the other things. They went right to the process that our body uses, and they've been able to leverage that. A couple of things about that I want to really highlight. So you all heard me say in January, Moderna had the blueprint of the virus and how to create these vaccines. Well, what took so long? It's all the safety and efficacy measures, the process that was very, very important. Even though we compressed it, you know, what was taken away was the bureaucracy and the normal timelines. You all have compressed your timelines. We've compressed our timelines. We focused on COVID. Normally, we would schedule certain meetings on just whenever calendar availability is. Now we've cleaned up our calendar saying COVID is top priority. Same thing happened with the pharma industry. They cleaned up their calendars to make COVID the top priority, but they never shortchanged the rigorous testing and the safety measures that were in place. All of the steps were followed, all the phases of clinical trials, all the presenting of data to different independent bodies before it was submitted for approval. All of that was done. Some may say, well, the technology is new. Yes, it is new. But it's not something that we just cooked up in a day. Pharma industry has been working on this for over a decade, so they have a lot of experience. In fact, the previous SARS epidemic, that's when they started on down the path of this technology, and now it's finally come to fruition. Again, I want to highlight, mRNA vaccines do not contain a live virus, so they're not going to give you COVID-19. So that's very important because people have already started talking about, I don't want to take the vaccine because I'm going to get COVID. Not from the vaccine. Second thing, you know, there's been a organized misinformation campaign about vaccines ever since they came out. But with COVID, it's very important for us to understand that there is misinformation being spread, that these vaccines are going to somehow genetically modify you, or a control strategy of the government over the people. That is simply not true. It does not interact with the human DNA. It does not get into your cell's nucleus or do anything with the person's DNA. And I want to make sure that this information is out there. This has gotten to the federal level, that such misinformation is being spread. And CDC also has come out and specifically talked about trying to curb that misinformation. I can tell you that has been said at this podium by some folks that attend our commissioner's court. And I want to be very, very, very clear. that this does not interact with the human DNA. It does not take over your nucleus of your cells to modify the person. So are these vaccines safe? Because that's a big question. Yes. So all of the steps have been followed just in a compressed time frame, from vaccine development to all the safety efficacy measures. This was the process. This is a standard process. They have followed it every single step. And then, next slide, please. I do want to assure that there are 3 top takeaways from this process of development of vaccines. The U.S. vaccine safety system is strong and robust, one of the best ones in the world. And our new safety systems are being added on top of what we already have. And every one of us has an important role to play in helping the CDC monitor any safety concerns related to any vaccine, including COVID-19, especially because these are new. We want to watch what happens when a large-scale implementation happens. There might be side effects that were not obvious in the clinical trials. One of the big concerns came out of UK. They did the clinical trials, everything was fine. When the first doses got released, somebody got an allergic reaction to the vaccine. So now there's this caution that if you have had an allergic reaction to any vaccine or an injectable drug, then you need to be careful taking these vaccines. Again, abundance of caution. We don't think that it's the vaccines causing it, but let's see what happens. I mean, maybe we'll find something, but all of that is an organized process so we can know early if there's a problem. So that's part of our safety program. The well-known one is the Vaccine Administration and Early Warning Response System, Adverse Event Reporting System. So that's VAERS. That's well-known. People have a way to report that to their clinician, report it directly to CDC. So you can go with the VAERS program. But to make things easier, they have just launched a new system called vSafe. That is in addition to VAERS, because VAERS process is a little bit elongated. This is a cell phone-based monitoring system. We're all very comfortable downloading an app, adding our information, getting a text message from the CDC directly after you've received your vaccine, sort of have an automated conversation with the vSafe bots about that. And there are people obviously checking on that information later. So that system is being rolled out right now and is part of this COVID vaccination drive that we want to make sure that people are aware. And again, it's a very easy, interactive way on your cell phone to be able to report any symptoms. Simple things like, oh, I had a ache in my arm, or I got a fever, and now I'm taking time off of work. We want to know about it. CDC wants to know about it. So the question is, how do we get back to normal? Because now there's all this, tools that we have. I want to make sure that people understand, yes, the vaccines are here, but it's going to still take us a long time to get majority of the people immunized so we can get back to normal. Till then, we need to do these things in combination. Get vaccinated, wear a mask, stay 6 feet away from others, and hand wash often. We cannot give up on those public health measures just yet because vaccines are in limited supply. It's going to take a long time for all of us to get immunized. And I do mean all of us. It's not something that we're mandating or the CDC's mandating. But the more people that take the vaccine, the faster we can get rid of COVID-19 or bring it down to levels where it's not a pandemic problem. Then you deal with it just like with the flu. And I'm going to make a statement, and it might be just me being overly optimistic, but with 95% efficacy, we can get rid of COVID-19. All it needs, and it's a tall order, the entire world to work with us and take the vaccine and do these things. So it may be a multi-year effort, but people need to understand, vaccines usually are not this effective. These are highly effective vaccines, and if we all work together through a common goal, we can actually get rid of COVID-19. This is how powerful these vaccines are, but we need to all work together. So that's all I have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That's the best presentation I've ever been given in terms of information about vaccines, how they work, what they do, what they don't do, the safety measures. That's just top shelf
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for that. If you could make those slides available to us,
yes, sir.
I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, and certainly not to contradict what Commissioner Brooks just said, I do appreciate the presentation, but I know based off of the concerns that I'm sure you're hearing, but I for sure am hearing about the vaccine, is that even though there's complicated science behind this, that people have a lot of questions that we're going to have to do a very good job in answering as clearly as possible without, for a minute there, I felt like I was back in cell physiology and undergrad.
I try to simplify as much as I can.
No, you did a good job, but people are very concerned,
Yes.
and rightfully so, right? And then if you add on to it, there is still a tremendous trust deficit with the government right now, all levels of government, quite frankly. And then if you add into that just the history of biomedical services with people of color and other parts of our community that have been tested, without their knowledge or without their consent. So I agree with Commissioner Brooks, but I would add that there's a lot of work that we have to do to educate folks so that they can make, the most educated decision that's best for them and their families. So
Absolutely, Commissioner, and y'all are aware we have a steering committee and several subcommittees that are actually focused on this. But what I ask our commissioners is the support to curb the misinformation being spread ahead of the vaccines getting here, because that does create a negativity. People already are concerned and they're tired. And here we are asking them to rally together and fight COVID again. But we really have a chance, because these tools bring us that chance. And all I need is your help in curbing the misinformation spread.
Sure.
Well, and I hope, what I get from this is hope. And right now we need that hope. And I think it's the most important thing that we can begin to give to people, not to lose their focus. Because we're not there yet, but we are definitely near the end of the tunnel, I believe. And I believe that by the end of this first quarter and certainly by the end of the second quarter, hopefully the vaccines will be widespread enough that we can, as you said, get as close as we can to doing away with COVID-19, and hopefully everybody will sign up and will take the vaccine. I know that won't happen, but I can always hope.
Yes, sir.
And I just know that there's a lot of folks who are very frustrated, who are very scared, and they need the hope that you've given us today. I have a couple of questions with regards to the availability. There's still a lot of people saying, when am I going to be able to get it? And I'll be very first. I want to ask that question too.
Yes.
When I need to see a list of the priorities, and I know the state's still going back and forth on that.
Yes, sir.
But I need to understand, one, what the priority lists are, and I need to know who's monitoring those priority lists so that we can let people know that. The other thing I would really like, I talked with Bill Hanna about this yesterday. I want doctors out there explaining what you just explained, so that this, these folks throwing out all this incorrect information, false information, that they can be called out for what it is. And I want the doctors to be there to explain just what you explained, so that people they can look on TV, they can look at different sources. I think if we get those press conferences, we need to put them on our website, encourage everybody else to do the same, so that these folks that are out there making these false statements can be shown for what they're doing. And I want the people who our society trusts to be making the announcements and letting that be the case.
Absolutely. And Your Honor, you're on the right path. We actually now have the Tarrant County Medical Society on our steering committee. And we've asked, who are some outspoken physicians that they would recommend that can be part of different subgroups. A couple of our health authorities, of course, have, wanted interest on joining the different work groups. If we get a handful of doctors, we might even create a separate physician advisory committee on that, like a panel that can be like the speaker's panel.
Well, let's stop. I mean, I've been guilty of this too. Let's stop talking about it.
Yes, sir.
Arlington, Fort Worth both have video studios that they've offered up. Let's work with Bill and with the information folks, the communication folks. Let's get this stuff out. Let's put it on YouTube. Let's put it wherever the other side is putting their misinformation.
Yes, sir.
And
We'll do
let's
that.
attack it for full speed ahead because I am excited about where I think we are now, because I think for the first time in a long time, people can look at this and they can see hope and they can see the end of the tunnel and they can see that normalcy may be back in sight.
Yes, sir. It's very near. We just have to work together. If we work together, we get there faster.
So
All
I've
right.
got
Thank you.
a couple questions for you, though, Vinny. One is going back to the testing, and you spoke to some of the concerns that more testing, that's the reason for the higher positivity rate. Has there been any, not any other, has there been any changes in testing that would potentially yield a higher result? Higher positive result?
No, not that I'm aware. I know we had a little dip with the holiday, but that, I think we've recovered from that. We've done a lot of testing since then. So overall, the real answer is that there's too much disease activity, and as much as we're testing, we're still finding a lot more cases. So that means that the disease is really widespread in our community. So that's the only explanation at this point.
Okay. And then back to with the vaccine, is I certainly too have received the concerns about the prioritization of it. Just this morning was talking with the CEO of one of the area nonprofits that's been provided direct COVID relief, and I know that there are others we've talked to that want to know, since they're out in the community providing relief to those who've been affected by COVID, kind of where do they fall? So obviously I know that still is yet to be determined, and we'll know as soon as we can know. But so I just wanted to mention that. And the last thing was that I've gotten questions about from constituents who have been approached to participate in trials, which obviously I would not tell them what to do with that, but where can a constituent go to kind of learn more about not a specific trial per se, but just kind of the trial process? Because I mean, most people up until this point had not been approached to participate in a trial, just because the magnitude was not there.
I think I had sent a website link once. I'll find it and send it to you all again. That is a specific site that the NIH and the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease, they created, that sort of has all the clinical trials related to these vaccines linked in there. And people can start there, a lot of information, enrollment information, and then of course a lot of these companies do their own advertising. For example, Moderna and Pfizer did advertising in our area for testing, and now AstraZeneca is recruiting about 250 people. So some of that is on radio and other channels.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say one thing, and again, it's kind of to close up, and I know we probably don't disagree. We probably disagree a little bit on this, but the statement that I made before Thanksgiving, the statement that I want to make exactly right now, and I'm just going to read it because it was in the paper this morning, is really urge people to social distance, wear a mask, and wash hands, but refrain from telling people to avoid family entirely. Our people right now are depressed. They are anxious, and I'm just not going to say don't see your family. I think each individual has to make a decision that they feel like is appropriate to protect their family, and that may mean wearing masks even when you're within your family. But folks are, they're isolated. They need to see their loved ones at times. And just as over Thanksgiving, we stood on the outside and looked at my wife's mother inside of her house, and the kids got to see her, I think that helped her tremendously. And I think we're going to have that same dilemma as we approach Christmas. It's not the time to let up. It's not the time to lose focus on wearing the mask, on being careful. But there's two legs to this. There is the COVID, but there's also just the isolation, the depression, and the mental health that folks are going through. And I want everyone to look at both. I do not want them to let down on wearing the mask, washing their hands, and keeping the social distancing. But I think you've provided us with hope today. And we're a little ways away from that. But so be careful during the holidays.
Yes.
But let's go forward and let's all work together on beating this, and let's look forward to 2021 and getting this COVID mess behind us.
Absolutely. And I'll just add, we're only human, right? And we need families, so I don't disagree with you. But be careful, like you said. Everybody now knows the tools on how to fight this, so let's just all use those tools. Thank you,
Benny.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Benny.
And as soon as you can tell me when I need to get in line and where I need to get in line,
yes, sir.
I'm going to do it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Don't get in front of me.
Yeah, JD said don't get in front of him, and I got a feeling there'll be others right. What we might do is we might, except for one of us, when it gets to the point to where they let old folks get it, we just, at least the four of us up here who is considered an old folk, we'll let the two of y'all go first, and then us youngsters will come in behind you.
I'm with you, Daddy.
Okay, now it comes this fun time of the day when we're going to...
So we have we have a total of 12. 4 are call-ins and 8 are in person. There are 2 individuals that actually make up 4 because they have asked to speak on 2 different topics on the agenda, Your Honor. So do you want to handle the calls first or the persons first?
I'm going to handle the calls first. I'm going to handle the calls as it pertains to the COVID, and then the 2 that want to talk about another matter. When we get to that other matter, I will call them again. But we'll not do that in the first time. So our first call will be Ann Kaiser.
And Kaiser.
Hello.
And this is Judge Whitley, and we're at that time of our agenda on audience participation. You asked to address the court regarding the COVID issue. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I ask the court to keep this in mind as they vote on their legislative policy statements today. One of the items listed under good governance can hardly be described as good. This court says that it opposes legislation that will decrease the authority of county government in the time of an emergency or disaster. This seems incredibly tone-deaf after months of rebuke from citizens. It also further validates our concerns about this court's lust for power. Of course, the court will never admit to any of this and will hide behind the guise of doing what is best for the county, but it is obvious that this policy is in reaction to the continued unfavorable response from citizens that this court has received. Good governance is not government overreach and blatant power grabs. Good governance respects the will of the people and is limited and restrained in its power. Therefore, I call on this court to strike this item from their policy statement as well as rescind the mask mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Have a good day. Next is Rebecca. Rebecca, this is Judge Whitley, and we're at that time on the agenda for audience participation. You had indicated that you wish to address the court, and now is the time. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. In May, the Texas Supreme Court reminded cities and government officials that there is no pandemic exception to the Constitution. The Texas state and U.S. Constitution was designed to limit the powers of local, state, and federal governments to protect the people from the very tyranny that is occurring today. The first 3 words of the Constitution are the most powerful: we the people. They declare that the Constitution derives its power not from a king, a governor, a Congress, or a commissioner's court, but from the people themselves. Article 1, Section 2, all political powers are inherent of the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their benefit. We are 9 months into the pandemic, and our local officials continue to abuse the powers. We, the people, elected you all to uphold the Constitution and protect our republic form of government. But you have repeatedly betrayed our trust. You went against the very platforms and policies that we elected you to represent. We, the people of Tarrant County, oppose your tyrannical force of governance and mandates. We oppose your disregard for our state and federal Constitution. We oppose your hypocrisy of rules for thee but not for me mentality. We oppose your one-sided views and narrow-mindedness to seek counsel from those that manipulate data to further one's agenda instead of seeking guidance from actual data and true science. We oppose your desire to destroy small business and people have worked for their entire lives to build. We oppose your mask mandates. We oppose your contact tracing. We oppose the harsh treatment of the very citizens you are supposed to represent. We oppose your stealing of taxpayer funds. We oppose your desire to increase your authority during times of emergency disaster. We oppose your continued lack of transparency, and we oppose your complicit nature of helping perpetrate electoral fraud in Tarrant County.
1 minute.
Citizens are growing tired of your disregard for the Constitution and trampling over their rights. Your time is running out, and the citizens won't be silent much longer. Thank you, and have a blessed day.
You too, Rebecca. Next is Robert Bucher. Trevor.
This is Robert Beaker.
Trevor, this is Judge Whitley. We're at that point on the agenda where it's your opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. This is regarding the mask mandate.
Okay. I'm going to read what the definition of RNA is, since we're going to try to be funny with the fake Dr. Vinny Taneja. Ribonucleic acid is a polymeric molecule essential in various biological roles in coding, decoding, regulation, and expression of genes. RNA and DNA are nucleic acids along with lipids, proteins, and carbohydrates. Nucleic acids constitute one of the 4 major macromolecules essentials of known forms of life. So now that we got that out the way, let's move forward. We cut that lie off real quick. How does it feel to have muzzles on each one of y'all commissioners? It must be nice that y'all can't speak on the Constitution for whatever reason. I guess y'all decided it's not that important anymore, or somebody might be pulling your strings or a puppet. Y'all should try to speak for yourselves and start telling them no. But that's a lost word. It's a lost art. How does it feel to somebody to tell you what to do with your health, how to move, how much money you can make? If you want to keep going down this road, then go ahead and tell your grandchildren, your children, and anybody else in your family that socialism is what you want. You can go to Venezuela and Cuba and ask them how that's working out for you. I can promise you it's not working out very well at all. So y'all just try and see. Now, I've been looking at the the 418 code, you know, the one that you try to hide behind everything on, and it still doesn't trump the Constitution. Y'all fail to see that. I mean, every one of y'all are spineless. Y'all will not hold anybody accountable. Y'all will not say, you know, maybe we're not doing what's best for this county, because if we're 9 months in and still having upticks and still after the vaccine, we're going to have to wear a mask. Let's be real. 95% efficacy rate is what Vinny said, right, on the vaccine, right? This vaccine is new. I'm just throwing it out there. So how do we know? No, we don't know. So quit playing with people's lives, and that's where I get mad, is you playing with people. 99.9% survival rate, and we still need a vaccine. Let's just be real. Let's just be real about this. Everything in the 418 code has an act. An act is a legislation, a statute of law made by a legislation body as an act of Congress is law by Congress of the United States. An act of assembly is a law made by a legislative assembly. So no, I haven't seen Governor Abbott call a legislative assembly. Any of y'all done that? Any of y'all heard him say, hey, give me the power to stop any statutes? The 418 code doesn't do that when you have the Constitution, Article 1, Section 28. And then the Constitution, Article 3, Section 62. Y'all ought to read. Learn how to read. If y'all read that, y'all be like, dang, something's wrong with this. We're violating the Constitution. The same oath y'all took when y'all put your hand on the Bible. Y'all should go home, hang your head down. Everywhere you go, hang your head down. And everybody, y'all and y'all's family should be ashamed of y'all. The same way everybody in this county is starting to wake up in shame. Look around. Look on the Tarrant County Republican page. Look at the Conservative page. Look at the GOP page. They're calling for each one of y'all to step down. We want y'all to resignation at this point. Yeah, thank you.
Next is Nancy Groves.
Judge, I have Ms. Groves as being in person.
Okay, I'm sorry. No, come on forward, Nancy. I apologize.
My position regarding your agenda item, Tarrant County legislative policy statements regarding good governance. I support legislation that will decrease the authority of the county government in the time of an emergency disaster. Overreach of this county government in 2020 has provided failing and closure of small businesses. It has provided increase in teen suicides. You have provided family members dying alone, inability to have an open funeral to assist with the grieving, increase in depression, untimely medical and dental care, failing and compromised education for our children. There is a concerted effort to emphasize case numbers of the COVID-19 virus, not deaths, and especially not deaths compared to previous years because it has not increased. It is the same as the flu. Why is Tarrant County Health not discussing the outpatient treatments available to prevent hospitalizations for those especially underserved populations and healthcare workers? There are treatments available, hydroxychloroquine and zinc, budesonide and zinc, and a newer one now, ivermectin. Why are you even discussing needing hospital beds and ventilators when there are successful outpatient treatments? Awake citizens understand that the mandates and medical management of patients provided by the CDC are political and are part of the plan for the Great Reset and the New World Order. The CDC is a corrupt public-private partnership funded by Big Pharma. Anthony Fauci is their PR person. The truth is Big Pharma and Big Tech censored the economical and effective outpatient treatments for this patented virus. This allowed the FDA to use emergency authorization for the COVID-19 vaccine by Pfizer. Emergency authorization allows Big Pharma to legally fast-track a medicine or vaccine without proper clinical trials. This is a win for Big Pharma and big business. Masks, social distancing, limited gatherings, stay-at-home orders, banning full occupancy for restaurants and bars are designed to promote fear and small business failure. You have chosen big tech, big business, and you answer to big money. I ask you to find your heart for humanity.
Thank you, Ms. Groves. Next is Blanca Martinez. Followed by Doug Hines, followed by Sherrod Perry, followed by Don Martin.
Good morning to all. Afternoon, actually. Thank you for having us. Thank you for listening. I wish that with the listening came some action. Week after week and month after month, we've been coming to this commissioner's court, and we get ignored. Our complaints, our protests, our concerns are not addressed. And there are hundreds of thousands of doctors that are warning against this vaccine. Hundreds of thousands, if not more. Doctors for Truth is one. They have lawsuits going on and all kinds of protests against the vaccinations and exposing what's really going on here. Preparing for the New World Order, one world government, control of population, loss of our constitutional rights, loss of our freedoms, lies upon lies being perpetrated by the mass media, a government-controlled media. Even the social media, 85% is owned or more now by Bill Gates. We have people like Fauci that has an interest, Bill Gates that has the patent and the interest on this vaccine and on the COVID, and he's still calling shots. Oh my God, what is going on? We have America's frontline doctors at America, with an S, americasfrontlinedoctors.com. Doctors that know, that are on the front lines, that have treated patients successfully, close to 100% success rate with the proper treatment. I'm standing here, I had it when I came back from Houston. And God was able to deliver me, and thank God that I had the information from these frontline doctors that told me what works, and it wasn't a vaccine. There's no need for a vaccine if there is medicine that works. Hydroxychloroquine works. Budesonide works. And that new one, Ivermectin, works. Why are they hiding it? Why is the media hiding the truth? We must not take this vaccine. There's no need for it, and it's global control. And God is saying no. They have come up against the hand of God. There's a great reset, but I say there's a great awakening, and God will awake his people. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Doug Hines, followed by Sherrod Perry, followed by Don Martin.
Commissioners, Court, thanks for having us back again today. As Blanca said, week after week, month after month, and it sounds like year after year from what I've heard this morning, we have been advocating for a fix to this thing. A fix to this thing is not restrictions. A fix to this thing is looking at real science, looking at real ramifications of what's going on in this court, and the downside of what's been done so far. Let's look at the science. If social distancing, if masks, if all this stuff, if washing hands worked, why in the heck are we at where we're at? I go out all the time. I'm out all day, all the time. I go to the gym. I go here and there. And there is 99.9% of the people who have been wearing masks since July 2nd. Why in the heck are we at this thing right now other than where it doesn't work? Why more? But anyway, and then look at the negative. That's the good news. None of this stuff works, but we still have it here. Look at the negatives you're doing from it. The social isolation you just talked about, Judge Whitley. the isolation, the mental health degradation we've got in this county, this country, this state, from these crazy restrictions. Why? We keep going up again. We're hitting our head against the wall. If it worked, it would have worked by now. It doesn't, and it never will. Freedom works. Liberty works. But you got to ask yourself, at some point, why are we doing this? And people are starting to say, what's going on? Why do we have the tyranny? Why continue to do this? Now, people are starting to think, is there something we're missing here? Is there some hidden agenda here? Is it, I don't know, money? I've asked about the CARES Act before. If you stop the declaration of emergency right now, would the CARES Act dry up? Oh, I don't know. But this looks really, really suspicious to the citizens of Tarrant County. And God and the devil are asking the same question. What will you give up to seek truth? Will you give up your tyranny? Will you give up this crazy stuff? Will you give up power? Because right now it's radical times. Radical times require radical people to get out there, get up off the bench, get out to the game, stand up for freedom in this county, stand up for freedom and liberty in this state, stand up for it in the country, and let all of us roar to the freedom and liberty of all of us here. We've got to get it going now. Please do it. Reject the declaration of emergency and get rid of the mask mandate, the business mask mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Sherrod Perry, followed by Don Martin, followed by Janet Jackson, followed by Jody Mueller.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, so again, like I said, we have this spike in cases, which again seems to be the justification for a vaccine. From what I've heard today. But actually, I'm going to go 180 from the narrative. The spike in cases, in my view, it actually justifies that we don't need a vaccine. Because if we have this spike in cases, then that means that we're getting closer and closer to herd immunity, which is something that has been brought up, and I see your reaction. Something that's been brought up many times in here, and I'm talking about natural herd immunity. Because if you really look at it, the purpose of a vaccine, right, is that we're all protected and that we're all immune. And so it's essentially the same goal, is herd immunity. But do you want it through natural means, or do you want it through unnatural pharmaceutical means? That's really, but it's the same destination, which is herd immunity. But again, if we go the natural route, as they actually stole my thunder. I was going to talk about those very same treatments that they listed, ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. And anytime you bring up certain, even with hydroxychloroquine, it frustrates me that became so politicized. I'm actually not either a Democrat or a Republican. I'm actually politically neutral, which is rare to find. I just look at facts. I look at data. I look at facts. That's my background, is statistics. That's all I've been doing all these past 8 months. I'm just looking at data. That's all I'm doing. But again, like I said, it's pretty clear that those treatments have been suppressed and demonized for a reason. Because it's not because they're not working. It's because they are working. That's why they've been suppressed. That's why ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and all the others, vitamin D3, and all the others have been attacked and suppressed. And that's why doctors are speaking out more and more. And just like Blanca said, they are writing, the Great Barrington Declaration. They're writing, they're coming together, Doctors for Truth. I mean, they're all around the world. So they're speaking out. So again, there is a counter-narrative that is being censored by big tech. There's a counter-narrative that's being suppressed by mainstream news, which is also, it's all one cartel. So that's why we have to keep talking about this New World Order. If you don't talk about the New World Order and the Great Reset, then you're missing the big picture. The big picture that this whole thing is being orchestrated worldwide. Okay, worldwide, and it's going to lead to a future that I don't want to live in. Like I said, it's looking like at a point where everybody's buying into this, and they're afraid to speak out. There's a lot of fear. I know why people aren't speaking out. It's because they don't want to lose their jobs. They wear the mask. They wear the mask because they're scared and they don't want to lose their job, even though they don't believe it works, but they do it. It's a lot of intimidation. It's a lot of people being bought off, and it's at this point, I don't see a way out of it other than people like me might need to move out of the country. So.
Mr. Perry, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next is Dawn Martin, followed by Janet Jackson, followed by Jody Muir.
So we've compared these mandates to Nazi Germany, and people have scoffed. It's not the same, they say. Sure, the targets are not the same, but the tactics and intentions are similar. They say if we don't know history, we are doomed to repeat it. Seems many have forgotten or never even learned. Hitler and Nazi government used a few techniques that dehumanized Jews, and we're seeing those today. First, prejudice, unreasonable feelings, opinions, or attitudes, especially of a hostile nature regarding an ethnic, racial, social, or religious group. The unreasonable thought that a healthy person can spread disease simply by shopping without a mask is rampant these days. As an unmasked group of us shopped at Walmart this past weekend, we experienced this exact thing. A man berated a mom and her 3 children in our group for being selfish assholes. He continued to shout and belittle our group, and police were called. We, the unmasked group, having been completely calm and non-belligerent, were the ones kicked out. Yet the man who was completely off the rails was allowed to remain and conveniently disappeared when police arrived. We are being unreasonably taught that people who don't wear masks are selfish, unclean, and uncaring assholes.
Watch your language.
Sorry, that was just his words, not mine. I apologize.
Language.
Next, scapegoating. The Nazis scapegoated the Jews, blaming them for societal problems in Germany. Non-maskers are being blamed for the spread of this supposed virus. Our inability or convictions to not wear a mask are then the whole reason we still have cases and why grandmas all over the world are dying. Scapegoats. Thirdly, discrimination. In the case of the Jews, the Nazis' prejudice against them made them easy to scapegoat. This naturally led to discriminatory law by the government and caused violent acts against them that individuals could perpetrate with impunity. As we have seen, even here in court, we're forced to in a back room and required to wear, of all things, yellow armbands, identifying our discrimination. In public, we see abusive acts and belittling of women and children simply for wanting to shop for groceries unmasked. And now, with the vaccine coming, no vaccine, no access. Finally, persecution. Night of Broken Glass, November 1938. Jews were forced out of their homes, their valuables confiscated, crowded into ghettos, homes, businesses, and temples lost. We see beginnings of this during the lockdowns. Businesses closed, never to reopen. Threats of fines for no masks and social distancing. Millions out of the jobs, losing their homes and even their lives. So you see, history does repeat itself. Some say it's not the same. They're right. The Jews waited until they were fighting for their lives. Thankfully, many of us did learn history, and we will not allow it to come to that. We will not comply. And if you're in Tarrant County, please join us at wethepeopletexas.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Janet Jackson, followed by Jody Muir.
I've pondered what to say for a long time. And I know none of you care. You see, my livelihood has been destroyed. I've now lost my home because we couldn't afford the mortgage anymore. But none of you care. None of you care to stop this madness. I wonder how it feels to line your pockets with all the cash you're rolling in. What kind of deals have you made to sell your soul? And the lies you continue to ruin, the lives of people who have committed suicide, the lives of people who murders are on the rise, the rates of death due to abuse, and you do nothing to stop it. You continue this. You continue to go along with this new world order and establish this beast system. You continue to fight against the very person you said is about Christmas, Christ. You are going against him by implementing all these things. You see, my body was created in His image, and this vaccine changes that image. You will be forever genetically modified. You will not be created in His image anymore. Period. You can't. This vaccine doesn't even contain virus particles. So if it doesn't contain virus particles, how can it be effective against a virus? It's another lie. It's another deception. You and your smug little attitude there, kind of chuckling or whatever it was. No, I will not be careful. This is a place for we, the people, to speak our grievances. We, the people. You serve us. We do not serve you. And you have forgotten that. You don't give a damn about the people.
Be careful.
I will not. I will speak my truth. I will speak the truth of the people of Tarrant County that stand here and have to live under your tyranny, your lies, your manipulation, your deception. You who don't wear a mask when you go out to fly for a birthday party and then say, oh, but it's going to blow the Rona around in the fly thing. Excuse me? There's no virus. It's a lie from the pit of hell. It is the 5G radiation being covered up by this false narrative where you want to take control of people. You want them to worship you. You know what? You're going to end up being on the same side as everybody else. You will end up either burning in hell because you will take that mark, or you will not. And at this point, you're not standing up to that. So no, I will not be careful. I will not cower in fear. I will not stand down.
Jody Mueller.
My name's Jody. I'm a living woman, not a corporation. The news we're hearing always is just bad, always bad, nothing good. Calling it a Christmas gift, as you did, or bragging that these vaccines are being fast-tracked due to this situation is actually sick. I'm not sure how this is a good thing to be used as guinea pigs. After the vaccines are given, we're still told we're going to be wearing a mask because they don't know how long these vaccines will work. Many healthcare professionals, elected officials, and spokespersons know about the actual harms of this vaccine and the irreparable damage it will cause us and to what level we will become ill. The lack of transparency to the public is astounding as to what the ingredients are and the known toxins used as fillers. The public has never been informed as to the evidence of the detrimental effects that will match the depopulation figures on Deagle.com. Many woke healthcare workers do not wish to be forced to take this just because of their chosen profession. I personally know several nurses being threatened with job loss if they did not consent to having harmful toxins injected into their body, leaving them without any remedy of relief or compensation due to vaccine injury caused by a manufacturer or the individual performing this assault against them. Tanasia last week said he won't bore us with the details, which also would include the ingredients. But omission is fraud, and gaslighting by all of you is abuse. The Tarrant County Medical Examiner is stating he's got refrigerated trucks waiting outside, but he doesn't state the actual reasons for the deaths. In addition to deaths labeled as COVID, Whitley said, we've seen more suicides and drug overdoses, and the county's murder rate is at its highest level in 25 years. You also claim funeral homes are filling up because people are waiting for the restrictions to be laxed. Do you comprehend why they're delaying it? They need support of family members during their time of agonizing grief. That's why.
1 minute.
Not because they fear being around loved ones without a mask. We're never given actual numbers of those that died only from COVID. There is an obvious reason for that, but none of you asked this question of Tanasia. If the idea is to cause unwarranted fear in public, omitting information is working. How many people are okay with hearing their loved ones are sitting in a refrigerated truck? I just had a friend of mine lost her son, an alienated child, just like mine are, in a car accident Saturday. I doubt she cares or wants him in a truck but I also doubt that she cares to be around wearing a mask or stuck with no help, no one backing her up and being there for support. I can't even be excited right now. I'm about to see 2 of my alienated children for the first Christmas ever. And I can't even be excited to go see them because they're so upset. And I don't want to see them in a mask, so I had to rent a place just so I could see their faces. And now I know I'm just going up there to say one last goodbye because we know about this depopulation, and I have to tell my children goodbye. One is being sent to Iraq for no reason. She's not enlisted as full-time. She's just National Guard, and she's being forced to have this vaccine she doesn't want. They're being forced to be isolated from me. And I know I have to go up to Nebraska and tell them goodbye because of what everyone is doing and all the lies that are being told.
Thank you, Ms. Mueller. Okay, Mr. Manius. We're gonna, those are on leg stuff, and we're gonna do that later. Why don't we take a,
There he goes.
of course, now we don't have GK. All right, the next item on the agenda is, you just did this.
Next item on the agenda is
whatever Mr. GK says it is.
Okay, now we're going to go to the administrator's office. And Rachel, are you there from Guidehouse?
Yes, good afternoon, GK.
Good afternoon. You want to go ahead and start your slide program?
Of course. Sure, we can advance to the project status slide. We'll get started. We'll begin with our recent activities as always. During the past week, we continued with daily monitoring of any updates from Congress about future federal funds for state and local governments in particular. We continued with our daily review of individual applications for the rental assistance program. We also discussed some potential strategies for the rental assistance program given some of the timing challenges and that some of the awards will not be made until after the CRF covered period. We provided feedback on the CRF eligibility of some NGO expenses, and we discussed next steps for FEMA, and Sean will provide an update that on the next slide. And finally, we began the process of drafting a year-end CRF report for the court to be presented on January 5th. So we're currently working with the staff who have led the county's 4 pillar programs to identify key metrics and then be able to report on the program's impact. And so the first step is meeting with the program leads, and we've begun that process. We've had one meeting, have another scheduled for this week, and we'll continue that process in the next coming weeks. Our areas for discussion today will be FEMA, the pillars of focus, county grants update, and county spend update. Any questions on this slide before we move on? And we can move on to slide 2. I will pass it over to Sean, who will give an update on FEMA.
Thank you, Rachel. Good afternoon, Judge and Commissioners. I've got a more meaningful update for you this week. I believe you have seen it, the publication about it, but the first FEMA project has been obligated by FEMA, basically meaning it's gone through all the initial review queues, and the funds will be dispersed to TDM. We'll have to go through the closeout process with them, but it's one step closer for the county to be able to draw down on those funds. So I spoke with our TDM affiliate last week, and they should be reaching out shortly for us to start the closeout process with them. In addition to that, we're still looking for ongoing expenses associated with vaccines to potentially submit for a second PW as well. But that's the general theme update.
So just to comment on the FEMA, issue, I believe that we sent each of you a press release from Senator Cornyn's office indicating that we had that Tarrant County had received $1.8 million as it related to FEMA. We have not received that money yet, but it has been authorized, and it was sent to, notification was sent to the senator's office. That's why they did the press release. As it goes through the process, we'll be receiving those funds then.
So we can already spend it?
Yes.
And it's like Sean said, the funds were authorized to TDM. TDM is I think Sean was right, the recipient. And so they're going to go through their process of review and then pass on the funds to the county. So there is that additional closeout step that he mentioned. So it'll be a little bit longer until the county sees those funds. Any other questions on FEMA for Sean? Okay, now we can move on to the next slide. This slide captures our high-level updates from the county CRF programming. There have not been any changes to this slide, but of course, we know the county continues to work on these programs and closing them out as we get closer to this December 30th end date of CRF, the covered period. Any questions on this slide before we move on? If we can move on to slide 4, this is the overview of the county's grants. Again, there have not been any changes to this slide from last week, so the total amount of county grants received and expected to be received is $235 million. And here we have CRF as well as what we call in the next slide, the multiple grants. And it's these multiple grants that have the deadlines that are different from CRF. So CRF in green has that December 30th deadline. Everything else on here has a different deadline. So there's not quite the same time crunch as we've been discussing for CRF. Any questions here before we move on?
Does this slide include the 1.8 that GK just mentioned?
It does not, not yet. So we want to wait for that number to be finalized before we put it up here.
Okay.
Okay, so we can move on to the expenditure slide. The county is on track to spend down all federal funds by the required deadlines. In the top table here, we've broken out spending by CRF pillar. Obligated here refers to both invoices and encumbered expenses, and social services to both rental assistance and NGO assistance. As you can see from the obligated subtotal for CRF, the county has invoiced and encumbered about $135.5 million in eligible expenditures. This includes the expenses the county is seeking reimbursement from FEMA. And once that first PW has been finalized, we'll add in that revenue source, a row there, to break out those expenses. In the plans column, we note the county is on track to spend all of its remaining $74 million in CRF funds by December 30th, and that will be achieved through the activities on the right. Moving down to the multiple grants, this includes all of the grants listed on the previous slide, except for CRF. The county has spent about $9.5 million so far and is on track to spend the remainder by those required deadlines. And of course, as I mentioned before, note that not all of these grants require the county to spend down by December 30th. There's some that extend past 2021, so there's a lot of continued funding for these specialized program areas. And then finally, on the total line, you'll see $235 million in county grant revenue, total obligated amount of $145 million, and an amount to be spent of $90 million. And any questions on this slide before we move on?
No.
Okay, so we can move on to our final slide. And this is our wrap-up slide. It repeats much of the same information from the previous slide, but just in a different manner. And it also includes FEMA PA as an anticipated revenue, which is not done on the previous page. Any questions from the court on our presentation overall?
No question. This is just some feedback, because I think this happened last week too, that on the printed version, it just says category name value. It doesn't show the same numbers that are here. So I think this is more for
yep,
GK's office.
So. Writing a PDF version as well, that might help with some of that.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, just one or two comments on Guidehouse. Our next meeting is going to be the 29th, which is in 2 weeks. Guidehouse is going to make a presentation at that time also. But what you're going to see on the administrator section is an extension of their contract. That covers the first week of January, so that they'll be able to give us a wrap-up report on January 5th, and that will be a no-cost extension. So I do want to talk a little bit about just an update on what we've accomplished this last week. Your Honor, you and the members of the court have already approved the claims register, so some of this will be a little dated.
Yes, we have.
So,
and now I'm seriously considering why I didn't go ahead and just close after the consent.
It's all right.
okay. So,
How do you respond to that, GK?
so some good news, okay? Small business assistance. We have now gone through and evaluated all of the applications. And we're going to take the remainder of these 2 weeks to notify those individuals that didn't qualify, and to explain to them where the disqualification was, and if there's an appeal, well, then we'll deal with it in the next 2 weeks. So because we have already approved the claims register, today on the claims register you approved 81 additional grants for $580,000 in value, which means that in this program we have assisted 2,918 small businesses, and we have distributed $23,298,000. So that is a compliment to all of the individuals on staff. That includes our office, budget, and audit, and all the other individuals that we've included on this. So they've done an excellent job for you.
Congratulations. That's excellent.
So on the testing, I think Vinny went ahead and made a comment on that. This week, or this past week, just on our sites, not all the sites that are testing in Tarrant County, but just on governmental sites, we tested an additional 23,581 individuals. One of the things that we did in your report, and it's going to look like this. You see this is a week-by-week summary on the testing, and you can see how we have increased our testing every week. When it comes to the rental assistance, and you'll hear some greater detail on that, we're continuing our rental assistance programs. We funded $3.2 million. We do have a large number of rental applications that we are working through. When Kristen comes forward in just a few minutes to talk about this, she's going to ask that you grant us some authority to spend some non-CRF funds to round that out. On the non-governmental assistance program, we continue to serve, and we've went ahead and we've done about 82 total grants for $8.2 million. One of the things that you're going to see on the local partners, on the municipal distributions, we have added our chambers of commerce that you might remember we assisted the chambers in 2 times, one with an amount less than $10,000 and then another amount of $50,000. Part of your red folder this morning, you have a listing of all the chambers that received or that participated in the 50 or below. And that gives you the number of chambers plus the dollar amount. Also on that chart, it shows that we're assisting 3 fire departments, volunteer fire departments. We have the Briar Fire Department on an action item under our section that is included in that particular area. One thing about our local partners, one of the biggest expenses has been that those monies that we have provided to our local municipalities. Mr. Schaffner reports that as of this morning, they have spent down 95.3%, and they are on line to spend all of their money also. You're not going to need to worry about if they don't expend all the money that we have to turn any money back, because whatever monies they don't expend will apply to the expenses that the county has already incurred. So, Commissioner Brooks, you had voiced your concern about us not turning in any money or turning money back. You've heard Guidehouse, and you can hear from staff also, we are not going to be turning any money back. So, members of the court, that's my presentation on that. And I'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
I have a couple questions regarding the test sites, specifically the Arlington one. So, actually, never mind. No, I don't. Sorry. I did have a question though on the with the municipal partners. You said as of yesterday's date that they spent the 95.3%.
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
GK, I want to thank y'all and all of your staff
for what I know has been a very exhaustive effort to get us to this point. And we really appreciate, while we may not sound like it at times, we really do appreciate everything y'all have done over the last 10 months.
Judge, we have some really good staff.
Yeah.
And they work very hard.
Absolutely.
So you do raise an issue, though. May I address something on the testing side? As you know, we're moving very closely now to the end of December. And we've been talking or discussing testing with TDM because they help with a bunch of our sites. We only have 2 sites that they don't assist us with. TDM has made an offer, and we've accepted. They're going to continue to run their testing sites, plus they're going to run our testing sites through the month of January.
Excellent.
Very good.
You know, and I don't think we can say too much about how good of a team that and a collaborator, thank you, that TDM has been. They have stepped up. Josh and his team, they've done an excellent job. And we've sent a letter down to the state telling them that, but I know everybody's concerned about what's going to happen in January. As far as the testing is concerned, we've got it covered for testing. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
So in that continuation through January, will it be what the current schedule is and the days that they're opened or closed? Like, will all that continue, or will there be changes to the days and hours?
It's not going to diminish. Okay. In fact, we're asking them to step up extra testing dates.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And we talked last week about the federal government and what they're doing in Washington as far as any additional assistance. We said we thought they were going to do a CR on the 11th, which they did, and that ends this Friday, the 18th. What we're hearing now is that there's more of a focus on everything that was in the 908 package with the exception of 2 issues. One is the assistance to state and local governments, and then the other one is the liability question. They wanted to, what we're hearing is that there was an effort to pull that out so they could get something passed, and we're going to continue to monitor that activity. That's why the December 29th meeting is going to be a very important meeting for us, because we'll have strategies that we will lay out if depending on what we see from Washington. And, Your Honor, that's all I have on that particular one. If there's any additional questions, I'll be more than happy to attempt to answer.
Any questions?
I think I have one outstanding question about the small business assistance grant that I asked last week, and I don't know if it's on here or not. If so, I overlooked it. But who applied the first round and maybe perhaps was not funded the second round? And I know that we were waiting to, I think, to get final numbers. So I would like to see that.
Yes, and now that, you know, I thought we would be able to get you that information last week. Now that we have the final numbers completed, we'll be able to put that report together. Okay. We'll make it available to the entire court.
Great.
Okay, so members of the court, if we can go to item number 2, and let me see what my packet is. I think that Kristen is going to come up and she's going to do item number 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, and 4. Kristen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Kristen.
Item 2 is a request for approval of an agreement with Briar Reno Volunteer Fire Department for the distribution of CRF as part of the Local Partners Program. That funding, if approved, is in the amount of $99,429.39.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item 3 is a request for the approval of agreements with Catholic Charities Diocese of Fort Worth and Grapevine Relief and Community Exchange for the distribution of CRF as part of the Rental Assistance Program. If approved, the agreements will provide funding in the amounts of $57,805.61 for Catholic Charities and $40,628.05 for Grace.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item 4 is a request for authorization to use interim funding to fund applications approved through the Care for Tarrant Rental Assistance Program. This program, as GK said earlier, has received a very high volume of applications over the last couple of weeks due to increased need and also increased marketing efforts. Because of that, we have quite a few applications still left to review, and we want to ensure that we can get through all of the applications that were received by the December 9th deadline and to process those and pay those that are eligible. That said, since CRF ends December 30th, we're requesting approval to use interim funding to pay those eligible applications.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Shafter is going to do item number 5.
We do have 2 public participations in this, so when you finish your presentation, I will call on one who is in person and one who is over the phone.
Great. Thank you, Judge. Commissioners, good afternoon. So we're here to request approval of Commissioners Court regarding your legislative program for the 87th legislative session. To give a few words of kind of introduction into the type of session that we're going to have. It's going to be one like we've never had before. During the interim, we have seen the House and Senate not have or have very limited interim committees to study interim charges. We have seen a number of, well, the House has been unable to actually have video testimony or Zoom testimony. The Senate has allowed some, but the House, because of the rules, cannot do that. So we've been submitting as necessary requests for information or information as requested by House committees throughout this process, throughout the interim. So what we have to present you today is 3 policy statements with a number of items for support and for support and opposition. There was a modified tax relief statement that I believe is in your red folder today. The 3 statements are broad and cover good governance, property tax relief, and then meeting community needs. These were developed in concert with the members of the Commissioners Court, departments, and other elected officials around the county in order to develop these items and make sure that the needs of our community were met, internal good governance structures, any changes that need to be made, such as the one that the Auditor's Department brought forward to change with the Public Probate Administrator to change the account that funds would sit in from the county treasury to the registry of the clerk that has the support of both probate judges as well as the auditor's office. So items like that to make our government more efficient and more effective. And then also meeting community needs. And one of the items that is on that particular list is to support mental health services, including making sure that we have adequate funds and program processes in order to make sure that the mental health needs within our community are met. And so that's one of the items that we're seeking approval to go forward with. So with that, I'll stop for any questions and seek your approval.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. We do have some audience participations, and I'm going to call Mr. Bucher at this point in time.
This is Robert Bucher.
Mr. Bucher, this is the point on the agenda where we're talking about our legislative policy. You had indicated you wish to speak. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. On this legislative policy statement, I mean, there's some things I definitely don't agree on. One is that y'all are opposing legislation that reduces transparency and disclosing the use of public funds. We should be supporting that. We should be supporting the fact that we can that I know it says reduce the transparency, but we need to have more transparency. You know, the decrease in the county's authority to inspect and regulate fireworks sales in Tarrant County, I just don't see spending the money to send somebody to even speak about that.
Now, we're saying that we're opposing legislation that reduces transparency.
I know, I mean, why would y'all even speak on it? That's just kind of like minute things. And the support to keep Tarrant County generating fines and fees in Tarrant County, definitely don't need to support that. Definitely don't need to support that. Local option sales and use of property tax swap, y'all support that, but then y'all oppose the state mandated county property tax increase. Y'all should be opposing anything that has to do with taxes at this point, especially with everybody losing everything they pretty much own. Oppose any arbitrary limits on the ability of local governments to raise revenue to meet community needs. That's something I feel like that we should continue to oppose. I'm in agreement with that, yeah, because we don't need to raise revenue to help, because we've got the CARES Act and everything. We don't need to pay any more than we're going to end up paying back for this next year when our property taxes go up. So, I mean, some of these things are minute, some of these things that we do need to agree on, but some of these things like the whole fireworks thing, that's not even something that really we need to be even chasing down. That's kind of silly. But that's just what I wanted to speak on that. Appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next is Doug Hines. I don't know if Mr. Hines is still back in the back or not.
We'll check real quick.
Whoops, sounds like he may be coming. Maybe not. Is anybody back there?
I think he kind of talked about that.
Okay. Yeah, and I believe what happened was that, these are the two individuals that spoke earlier, and they may have combined some of their comments.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Judge, if I can make a couple comments, and or Commissioner, please.
I was just going to add that obviously I know as we move forward with things in the session, we may need to see where it's appropriate to amend or to add to our agenda, our policy agenda. I do want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to support public health. And then specifically within that is the maternal and infant mortality and some of the challenges that we experience with the state. And there may be other areas too. So just want to make mention that that would be a priority of mine for sure. I know that we can find points to agree on and how best to craft that policy agenda. So.
Great, and thank you for that, Commissioner. We'll review some policy options and get back to you all, and that ties in perfectly with what I was going to mention to the court, which is that we do have some other departments that have submitted items that we're reviewing, and we will be bringing back to you all, including some court-related issues, such as the taking County Court 6 and making a domestic violence or family violence court, those types of issues that we're going to want to bring back to you all in the next few weeks.
Russell, one of the things that I would say to you, and I would basically say this to everybody in here, or in all departments, all elected heads, we need to all coordinate through Russell at least, and make him aware of any issues that they are taking to the legislature. There were a couple of instances last year where we found out via legislation after the fact that we were down there, one department was supporting and the court was opposing. And so we need to, it wasn't a department, it was an elected official. We need to at least be aware of that. And hopefully we can reach some sort of an agreement to where we don't have one person down there for Tarrant County speaking for and another one down there speaking against. However, if that ends up being the case, that'll be the case, but we would like to know that, and so I would encourage you to get with any elected official, or especially anybody who has legislative folks within their departments that are down there on a regular basis from that standpoint. And I just want everybody to work together to that end, and as much as possible assist each other in making sure that we're aware of the ramifications so that you can take it to the other organizations. I mean, we deal a lot with the folks from TAC, folks from Conference of Urban Counties, as well as the other large urban counties that have their own Russell lookalikes.
Thank you, Judge.
I heard that, Chief.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to hear this.
Thank you, Judge.
And to
Commissioners.
Russell's point, obviously, because of COVID and the changes in how, the whole session is going to go, it's even more important that we are as close to being on the same page as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Russell.
I will go ahead and do the last 5, and all of these are a continuation of our relationship with TechShare and our service level agreements with them. On item number 6, we're requesting that the court approve an FY21 TechShare Indigent Defense Software as a service addendum between Tarrant County and the LGC.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 7 is we're requesting approval of TechShare Prosecutor Revenue Sharing Addendum, a resource sharing addendum between Tarrant County and the LGC.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. I move approval of items 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Second.
8, 9, and 10.
Yes. 7, 8, 9, and 10. Or did we just do prosecutor a few minutes ago? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion's passed unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I do have a question, BK, given, I guess, with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items that total just under $2 million, where does that put that in the context of where we are with TechShare?
Okay, so we have a multitude of different software, TechShare software that we run. These are continuation of software. I will tell you that that in addition to this, that we are going to be going live with jail on around April 15th of 21. And we're working through court, and we believe that we will be going live with court around September 1, 2021.
And we are fixing to get a check on prosecutor because we have sold that to some counties on a software by service, and I think our share is like $240,000. $245,000 return on that.
Commissioner, does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
Second. And a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you and good afternoon. We have 3 additional items for the court today. The second item, we're asking approval of a waiver of terminal benefits. This is for Constable Johnson. He's requesting a waiver of 392 vacation hours effective January 4th of 21, the details of which are outlined in your communique. We're estimating the net cost to the general fund to be approximately $2,190 and some change. That does include fringe benefits.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
I abstain.
Motion passes 4-0
So our next item, we're asking for an approval of an extension of 3 project positions in the sheriff's office. All 3 of these individuals are assigned to the jail management system project. We're requesting, or the sheriff is requesting, an extension through September of 2021. So that will be the end of the fiscal year. We're estimating the impact to the non-debt capital fund to be approximately $237,483 and some change. That does include fringe benefits.
Do we have that in the budget?
Yes, we do.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
In our 4th and final item, we're asking the court to approve a double fill as well as a waiver for juvenile services. Mr. Medlin is losing his program analyst at the end of January, and so his request is twofold. He's asking for a waiver of 400 vacation hours. He is also asking for the ability to double fill this position. As explained in your communique, this is a very critical position in his organization. The double fill, if approved, would begin December 26th and would run through the end of January. We're estimating the net cost of this request to the general fund to be approximately $4,500. That does include fringe benefits.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Vinnie?
So we have 2 items from public health for your consideration this afternoon. Item number 1 is we're requesting your approval for an agreement with Trinity Metro to serve as a corporate close point of dispensing facility during public health emergencies.
Move approval. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item 2 for your consideration is a approval of a provider agreement with Aetna Better Healthcare Services for healthcare services provided at Tarrant County Public Health.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Melissa?
Come on down.
Good afternoon. Okay, we have 6 items for your consideration. The first is an award recommendation for RFP number 2020-204. This is for return mail capture and recording automation for the tax office, awarding to RT Lawrence Corporation per contract terms.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion, Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The second item is regarding RFP number 2021-002, automated mail scanning and check processing for the tax office, also awarding to RT Lawrence Corporation per contract terms.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The third item is regarding bid number 2021-003 for plaza building renovations for facilities management, awarding to Concord Commercial Services in the amount of $83,820. If approved, we're also requesting approval of contract and acceptance of the payment bond. We're excluding item D. This contract doesn't require a performance bond.
So move approval of 3A, B, and C?
Yes.
Okay. That's my motion.
It's only required, Commissioner Brooks, if it's over $100,000.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The fourth item is regarding bid number 2021-010 for Tim Curry Criminal Justice Center cooling tower replacement for facilities management, awarding to Decker Mechanical in the amount of $1,012,413. If approved, we're also requesting approval of the contract and acceptance of the payment and performance bonds.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The fifth item is a new annual contract for bid number 2021-024 for DNA laboratory long-term freezer storage for the medical examiner's office, awarding to the primary and secondary vendors listed per unit price.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And the sixth and last item is a award recommendation for RFP number 2021-026, Patient Satisfaction Survey for HIV Administrative Agency, awarding to Collaborative Research an amount of $60,000.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Appointments today. There being none, then we'll move on to the approval of bonds, certificates, and self-insurance.
Members of the court, I'm going to do the certificates of self-insurance, and then Ms. Diamond is going to do the bonds themselves. So we're going to ask for 3 separate votes on this. The first one, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the certificate of self-insurance by Tarrant County in lieu of bond for Roy Charles Brooks as Precinct 1 Commissioner, and also Roy Charles Brooks, Precinct 1 ex officio Road Commissioner.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Wait.
Yes.
Vote comes in 401.
401, yes, that's correct. Okay.
I voted for that.
Yes, but Commissioner Brooks abstained.
That was
okay.
So we're now going to, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve a certificate of self-insurance by the county in lieu of a bond for Gary Fickus as Precinct 3 Commissioner, and also to Gary Fickus, Precinct 3 ex officio Road Commissioner.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
401.
Okay, we're now at a point where we're going to do several for constables. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve a certificate of self-insurance in lieu of bond for Harry Dale Clark, Constable Precinct 1, Robert McGinty, Constable Precinct 2, Darrell Hoffman, Constable Precinct 3, John Siegel, Constable Precinct 6, Michael Campbell, Constable Precinct 8, and also a certificate of self-insurance in lieu of bond for Bill Wayburn as sheriff.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Why are the other 3 constables not getting it?
Well, we're about to do one on Constable Precinct 4 just a second. And then the other 2 are newly elected and have never been constable before. Our policy requires that they have a bond rather than a certificate of self-insurance, and that's what Ms. Diamond is going to present to you.
Okay, so still tell me why we're doing Jody separate.
Because there has to be an abstention.
So all these we're grouping together. That's what
yes.
Okay, got it. Was there a motion?
There's a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Then finally, we're requesting a certificate of self-insurance in lieu of bond for Joe D. Johnson, which is Constable Precinct 4.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Abstain.
401.
Thank you.
One of our great traditions, Bonds Day, right? It's good to see everybody. Thank you, GK. All right, so we have 4 actual bonds today for you. The first 2 that I would request your approval are for constables, as GK explained. They are newly elected and have not been constables before. They are for $1,500 each. One is for Pedro Pete Munoz, who is the constable elected for Precinct 5, and the other is for Sandra D. Lee. She was elected constable for Precinct 7, and for those 2 bonds, I request your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And then we have 2 more bonds, and these are for our tax assessor collector. By law, she has to have 2 bonds. Each are for $100,000. One is for the state taxes and will ultimately be filed with the Comptroller's Office in Austin. The other is, it will also be filed locally, but a copy goes there. The other is for the county taxes, and it will be filed with the county clerk's office. I have reviewed each of these bonds. As with the other 2, they are in proper form, and we request your approval.
How much is that second one?
They're both $100,000.
Yeah, that won't do much good if you were to...
They're statutorily capped at $100,000.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And the statement that you always like to hear, we are now done with certificates of insurance and bonds for this season. Thank you very much.
Thank you, AD.
There being no further business at this time, we will recess our open meeting and proceed to close to discuss items exempt under Section 501. Actually, the government code, I say I've got to get my running start. 501.77, wait a minute, what is it? I'm not sure.
Section 501 of the Texas government.
Point 071, 072, 074, 076, and 087. Had to get that running start. I missed that.
That's what happens when you approve the claims out of order.
Having returned from closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time, we are adjourned, and please remember to in memory of the 2 folks.
Yes.
Bob Summers.
And then Deputy Mayor Pro Tem
Jim Swaffer.
Merry Christmas, everyone.